And it is our pre-show for today's 220-1102 Core 2A Plus study group. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're just getting things started here. I haven't even turned all the lights on yet. I'm sitting here in the dark. See, there's nothing there. People are always wondering, hey, when are you going to turn on the green screen? There's not one. I have to turn the lights on. So let's see if I can get the lights turned on, and this will be like magic. Or here's the other side of this. Maybe it is a green screen, and I'm simply going to turn on the video that turns the lights on for the green screen. See? So you really don't know. Let's turn on the background, this one and that one. Two lights. Click next, click apply, and we're good to go. And here is our background. There we go. That's a little bit nicer, isn't it? Okay, now we're almost ready to get started. I have been constantly monitoring. I've been running our live stream feed for quite some time, and it's been okay. So we're not going to poke the bear. We're just going to happily continue on with our day. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. We get started in about less than 8 minutes and get all of that done. We don't need to see my email or any of these. Let's just do that. And then I can put up this. Perfect. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. There's so much to get done today. I've got this live stream, the first hour, I'll be asking you questions. Save your questions yourselves for the second hour because I'll take questions from the chat room. So that's the plan. That is the plan. Hopefully the plan will stay in place. Hello, Chicago and downtown Houston. Thanks for joining in, Jeff. Hello, Silicon Valley. Haven't been out there in a while. Haven't been hanging out on Tasman Drive for quite some time. I need to get back there. There's Courtney in Texas is here, and Grand Rapids is here. Got a lot. We got a lot there. Courtney says, took 1102, got a 672. So close, though. So close. I will tell you a nice tip. Go back to your login for the Pearson View for the account information. It will show you what areas you may not have done well in and tell you what sections of the exam objectives you might have missed. So that's what that is about. And we're already getting the super chats coming through because Philip says just passed my 1101, 1102 prep starts today. Congratulations on your Core 1. Best of luck with your Core 2. And you're right. And also thank you for the $4.99 super chat. We appreciate that too. We always like those. Can't say no to that. So congratulations again, and thank you for your support. We really do appreciate it. Hello, New York. Thanks for being here. We get started in just over 5 minutes. We got a little bit of time. So let's check cameras. Cameras look good. It seems like this is like a hair off. Okay, that looks all right. I've got cameras all look good. They've been working as expected, so I'm going to knock on wood for that one. It's 75 degrees Fahrenheit here in Florida. So that's the good part, right? That's the fun part. If you ever get into working through all of the technology around these things, it's interesting how it all comes together. We've got in our particular area, there is a hospital that apparently got hit with ransomware Thursday night of last week. And so they're coming up on an entire week that a level 2 trauma center has been completely without technology. So remarkable. It's when you see stories in the news, you always say, oh, this happened to this company, this happened to this company, that happened to that company. It's when it's like it's in your city. It's when it's finally hit home that, oh no, this is super bad, especially with hospitals. That's something you really don't want to run into. So it's interesting to watch the news and see how things are going along those lines. It's always a challenge. Oh, okay, 5-minute warning. 4-minute warning, really. I missed it. What else do we have here? We should probably fix the way we look would be nice. Okay, that looks pretty good. I've got all new questions for the 1102, so this should be good. Questions you've never seen before. I think you'll do pretty good. We'll run through them, see how that works for you. Recordings, are they going? I've already done my intro. Yep, recordings are going down here. You can see the Cylons. We are recording also to YouTube for whatever that's worth, but local recordings are always good. Do I offer anything in IT fundamentals? That would be the ITF. Do not currently have anything on the ITF side. So nope, I sure don't. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I do get people asking from time to time. It's just not a big request. I wonder how many organizations are teaching to the ITF. It would be interesting. I've never watched live. How do you answer questions? We'll talk all about that in just a moment. You can almost see it up here. Well, really, you just go to the link, professormesser.com/QA. And we'll talk more about it when we get started. We aren't started yet. This is not the live stream. We got 3 minutes until we get started. So don't worry. We'll give you all the information you need to participate, follow along, enjoy the live part of this. It's one of the benefits of being here live. You get to answer the questions along with everyone else. Get your vote in for all of this. That's kind of fun. All right, stream looks good. We've got these 3 things up. Everything looks okay. Everything looks all right. It's all right. It's all right. All right. So next on our list is getting everything going. I like it when everything is allegedly working. It seems like I have everything sort of in its place at the moment. I do have a checklist. I should probably go back to that. So I have to figure it out. Destiny in the chat room says we had ransomware at our work end of 2019. School district was down for about a week. Yep, that's about right. Boss came up with some things for us to get tech devices back up and running. Yeah, at the hospital, we hear the stories are that they are doing everything by hand, writing everything down like we used to do. You know, write it into the chart instead of it being technology for the chart. You do have to wonder, though. I don't think we'll ever hear exactly what went on. They're not going to make that public because they are a private organization. It would be interesting to know, where's the backups? Did the backups work properly? Is there something we should have done with backups? Do we need to have more backups? Do they image? Do they not image? I have all these questions. Where'd it come from? How did it get in? But allegedly, they're going to find out that information and work through it. So we'll see. You just never know. It's a bad situation. It's unfortunate. It's one that I'm sure the IT folks in that organization are. Well, it's been almost a week now. Can you imagine how that must be? Some of you can. Some of you can. That is challenging. That's something you don't want to become an expert in, right? It's exactly the way it works. Okay. Another good news. We'll go with this. Preston says, thank you for your assistance past the 1101 last week. Congratulations on your Core 1. And Preston says your material helped out tremendously. I'm glad it did. I'm glad we were able to be a small part of that. As I always say, you're the one who actually had to do the hard work, the heavy lifting. So congratulations. Okay. Next step. It's top of the hour. Let's see if we get a green light, which I didn't get yesterday. Now I got a green light today, which means we could probably do a live stream. And why not? Why don't we just do one? Here we go. Let's get this thing going, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2023 Professor Messer 220-1101. No, it's 1102. It's the Core 2 study group. We always do A+ study groups 2 in a single week. This is our second of the week, and we're going to focus all on Core 2 questions. Everything we'll go through today comes directly from the 220-1102 exam objectives, and we have all new, brand new questions for you in this first hour. And in the second hour, I'm going to provide you with a list of places you can go to ask me questions. So we sort of turn things around in the second hour, which we usually call our after show, but it's really just an extended version of the current show. We've got a lot to go through. In fact, as I have a look at this was a question asked earlier, is if you are here live, you can participate with us. You can lock in your votes and see them tallied up on the screen. And the way that you would do that is to go to professormesser.com/QA. So pop open a new browser window and go over to that location. You can also, if you have the Socrative Student app, you can get that from your favorite app store. That Socrative Student app can also help you because it will help you focus on and have a dedicated app for this, which is kind of nice to have that, by the way. But it will ask you for a room name. That room name, make sure you spell it right, PROFESSORMESSER. So you've got a little bit to work through here to get online. Couple options for you. Pick the one that fits best with you. And if all of that works, you will see a question waiting for you right now. We call this our rewind question because it's a question we did last month, but I want to see if everybody's able to get in, answer questions the way they should into the front end. And you can find in the Socrative front end a question waiting for you that says, an MSP has identified a problem with a low server storage space at a customer site. Which of the following would have provided this information? Would it have been RMM, HSM, RDP, MDM, or ISP? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Please know hints in the chat room. That's really our only standing request or only standing rule, if you will. But the way that you might want to focus on this instead is to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer there. So you can always answer. If you're not here live, obviously that link is not going to work very well with you, but you can still follow along with what we're doing here. And we'll get back to this question in just a moment. First, I want to thank everyone for being here. We've got so much that we've been working on to get you questions and live stream information. There's always something interesting going on behind the scenes. And if you'd like to keep up with what we're doing, make sure you follow us on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, on whatever your favorite social media site happens to be. Simply type in professormesser.com/ the name of the social media site you'd like to find me on. So /YouTube, /Twitter, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, /whatever it happens to be. And if it goes there, then that's where I am. If it doesn't go there, then obviously I'm probably not on that particular third-party site. We're going to focus today on the 220-1102 exam. The 1102 exam was released on April the 20th of 2022, so it hasn't even been around for a year at this point. Very, very early on in the scope of using this particular version of the exam. We expect this exam will retire somewhere around November of 2025. So if you sit here in February of 2023, you got plenty of time to work towards this exam. Don't worry, it's not going away. Nothing's changing. Generally, nothing changes with these exams until you get to that final retirement date. The exam itself is 90 minutes long. The exam for the 220-1102 requires you to earn a 700 as a passing score on a scale from 100 to 900. So you've got a number of different options there. Hopefully that can help you with planning your studies, but CompTIA doesn't tell us a lot about how they grade things, and that's kind of an odd grading scale from 100 to 900. You really can't reverse engineer it. You really just have to do your best, and I think you'll be okay. If you are wondering what is on the exam, a full list, a detailed and very important bulleted list you can find in the objectives. I have a link to those objectives at professormesser.com/objectives. I'll also let you know that for the 220-1102 exam, our topics come from these four domains: operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So we're going to cover those topics today. Maybe we'll get through a couple of those as we go through, but those are the ones that we'll focus on. Everything we do today will come from that Core 2 exam. We've also got a replay available of this video immediately afterwards. As soon as I hit the stop button, YouTube spends a couple of minutes going through and working on that video, and then it's posted to my YouTube channel automatically. We also have an audio-only version as a replay. I distribute these in podcast format. So if you ever want to add this to your podcast listening program or to the podcast app that you use on your mobile device, simply go to professormesser.com/podcast. You can add my A+, Network Plus, and or Security Plus podcasts there. Or if you're already using a third-party streaming service like iHeartRadio or Stitcher or Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts, they're out there as well. If you're using a podcast listening service that I don't currently have my podcast on, just tell me and I'll add it to that list as well so that everybody can gain access to those replays. If you wait about a day, you can look at the YouTube video description, and my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this, hi Lori, she's going through and giving timestamps, posting timestamps for everything that we do. So if you're looking for a particular question, you're looking for a particular information from a message or a question that was asked in the after show, it's all in here. So you can always go to the YouTube video description to get that information. And again, it's put there about a day afterwards, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, depending on what's going on in our world. So you just never know, but we try to get it done in about a day or so. That list can help you really find things quickly. So just look at the YouTube video description for all of that. When we're not here live, you can, of course, join us over on our Discord chat. We've got professormesser.com/Discord available for you to quickly move over to our Discord server and join. You don't need any special access or special information, or you don't have to purchase anything. It's just there with a lot of people who are studying for their A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. They are trying to get through all of these questions and labs and objectives. People are asking questions and answering questions in there all the time. It's a great community. We'd love to have you join us over at professormesser.com/Discord. I'll also let you know that eventually you'll need to take your exam. And you can, of course, go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for your voucher. Or you can go to professormesser.com/voucher and buy exactly the same voucher, but get it at a discounted price. You don't need a discount code. You don't need an extension in your browser or something else that you have to juggle. There's not a game here. I simply provide discounted pricing for the vouchers, and they're on my website. These vouchers currently are available for US and Canada. If you are physically located in the US or Canada, these are the vouchers for you. Unfortunately, I don't have any vouchers right now for anyone who may be physically located outside of the US, Canada, or some US territories. If you do purchase a voucher on my site, though, I give you a little bit extra. So for free, I will throw in my CompTIA Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook you cannot buy. It's only available with my Success Bundles or when you purchase a voucher. And you will find that just included as one of the downloads that you can get out on my website. You can find all of that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question I asked earlier, which was not this one. It's the one from earlier. Let's just flip over to it. Here you go. An MSP has identified a problem with low server storage space at a customer site. Which of the following would have provided this information? Would it have been RMM, HSM, RDP, MDM, or ISP? Of course, all of you should go out to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answers. And let's see how you answered this one. Let's show the results on the screen, and we can see that 55% of you say the answer is RMM. That's a pretty good number, certainly the majority. 22% of you say it's HSM, 12% say MDM, and then 8% for ISP and 5% for RDP. So the real question, especially with ISPs that have quite a challenge, you can think a managed service provider, that's what MSP stands for. That managed service provider probably has many different customers, and they are constantly monitoring and making sure that all of the systems at these customer sites are working as expected. And as you can imagine, you need some relatively advanced software to be able to monitor all of those and keep everything separate and have ways that you can easily alert and provide information on uptime and availability. One of the best ways to do that is through the use of an RMM. Many MSPs use these RMMs. These are remote monitoring and management software devices, and they will allow the MSP to monitor all of their customer networks, all of their customer servers. Plenty of information can be gathered through the use of an RMM. So they can look and patch operating systems from here. They can check the status of the operating system. They can check for availability and uptime monitoring of these devices. It's quite a remarkable piece of software. This is one that I used. There's a free demo out on the internet, so I just grabbed a screenshot from some things that I was doing. But this is a company with a number of different servers, a file server, a domain controller, and then for an individual device, like the file server I put here, you can see all of the different checks that it makes. Check the disk space, can you ping it, do a CPU load check, so you can really see how well this device is doing across many different metrics. That's the advantage of having an RMM. And indeed, 58% of you said, yep, an RMM is exactly what I would have chosen as well. So that hopefully can give you that information that you were hoping to see. HSM, RDP, MDM, and ISP, all legitimate technologies into themselves, but all of those don't have anything to do with an MSP identifying problems with low disk space on a server. So this is one where RMMs can be extremely useful. And if you're working at an MSP, you probably already know this one, probably something you knew from the very beginning. So that's a great increase over the number of people who answered last month. So well done for our entry question, our rewind question of the month. Now let's change this up a little bit, because some of you have mentioned this in the past. If you've taken a CompTIA exam, you know that you don't get multiple choice-based questions right out of the gate. They give you a handful of performance-based questions when you start the exam. These performance-based questions tend to be more involved than a relatively simple multiple choice-based question where you simply get an answer with multiple choices. But what if the question asked you to fill in the blank? What if it was a drag and drop question? What if you had to you were put at a command prompt and you were asked to perform a function? What if you need to sort things in a particular order? All of those are types of performance-based questions. So I have for you, as we always do, the first new question of every study group is a performance-based question. So let's look at our performance-based question of the month. I have a number of Windows utilities, and I want you to match the Windows utility to the description. You will notice that I have 7 utilities, but I only have 4 descriptions. So we will have some left over at the end. This is an interesting technique, and you'll sometimes see this on the exams. So for those of you listening in, I want to step through all 7 of these Windows utilities. The first is robocopy. Then we have pathping, SFC, chdir, winver, netstat, or ipconfig. Those are the 7 different utilities. So they are, again, robocopy, pathping, SFC, chdir, winver, netstat, ipconfig. And we have 4 different descriptions here, and this is where it gets a little challenging. So our first is list all devices connecting to port 443 on a web server. The second is repair any corrupted operating system files. The third is identify the build number of a Windows 11 Pro laptop. And lastly, identify a slow network link between 2 devices. Now, obviously, we're going to have 4 of the utilities on the left side. We will match to those 4 descriptions on the right side. Now, if you think they're already in the right order, you can simply put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D right into the link you see on your screen. Pop open that new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA, and that will allow you to put in what you think the answer might be. You don't have to type everything in. I want to thank David in the chat room with the $20 super chat. David says, thank you for all your content. I completed A+ last summer, passed Security Plus 2 weeks ago. Practice exams are gold. Thank you, David, for that. First, congratulations on your A+ and your Network Plus. And I'm so glad that our practice exams were able to help you with your studies. We work really hard at trying to put together the most accurate practice exams you will find. You want to find practice exams that are exactly matched to the tone, the style, and the difficulty level of the exams. And if you have a practice exam that is too easy, that doesn't help you. If a practice exam that's too hard, it doesn't help you. You need a practice exam specifically written to emulate or simulate the same type of structure and style of the CompTIA exams. Hopefully we're able to do that with our practice exams for you. So let's have a look at let's see if people are able to put in the answers here. I'm looking at a number of them. A lot of people have not put in their answers. They're still trying to figure it out. Which one of these four things has happened to be? Let's step through each one of these and see if we can individually figure out what these things are and how we might use them. So let's start at the top with robocopy. Go to this next one on our list. There we go. Clear the slate here. Robocopy. There was not a description for robocopy in that list. So if you chose robocopy for any one of those, you probably were not getting another one correct. This is to copy files between Windows systems. If you're doing that, robocopy is one of many ways to copy files between systems. Robocopy, a great little utility, stands for robust copy. It's not a robot, it's a robust. Kind of an oddly named copy command, but a lot of great features in robocopy, including the ability to recover if a network connection goes down in the middle of your copy session. So if you're copying a very large file, you're copying it between multiple sites and the WAN link goes down, robocopy will wait till the WAN link comes back up and then simply resume what it was doing, which is kind of nice. Next on our list, PathPing. PathPing, a great utility, and that matches our description D, identify a slow network link between two devices. One of the nice features of PathPing is it performs a trace route, so it's able to map out all of the different routes between point A and point B. And then once the trace route is done, it does some pings to all of these different routes to see which one are the faster links and which ones are the slower links. It takes a number of minutes to perform its analysis, but once it's done, it provides a wealth of information, and that is a Windows-specific utility for PathPing. Next on our list is SFC, the System File Checker, and that matches description B, repair any corrupted operating system files. That really is what SFC is for. It's to look at the core operating system of your Windows environment, identify if any of those core files have been changed since they were installed or updated, and it will identify files that have been changed, and if you ask it to, it will fix those files for you. That's why we often see people use SFC after recovering from malware to make sure that the core operating system files are as they should be, because you never know what malware might change on a system. Fourth is CHDIR or CHDIR, or really CD as the abbreviation. That's change directory. So if you're working at the command prompt on a Windows computer, or to be fair, on a Linux device or Mac OS, it's the same command to change directory from one folder to another, one directory to another on those particular systems. Fifth on our list is WinVer. You might be able to determine what that is just based on the name. That's providing the version of Windows that you happen to be running. Simply run that at the command prompt. It'll pop open the splash screen for the identification for that particular Windows version. So if you're trying to identify the build number of a Windows 11 Pro laptop, that was your description C. This is the utility you should be using, which is WinVer. A great little utility, especially if you're sitting down a brand new system, you have no idea how the system is configured, what operating system might be running. WinVer is what you'd like to see to be able to provide those details. Next on our list is Netstat. Netstat will provide you with a list of everything that's communicating outbound and inbound to your computer, and that is going to match description A, list all devices connecting to port 443 on a web server. So you brought up a web server and you're wondering, is anybody connecting to the web server from the outside? Is it working the way we would expect it? Let's run Netstat to identify everyone who's connecting, what IP address they're connecting from, and let's see what else might be there. And then lastly, we have ipconfig. We've run out of descriptions, so I'll just put my own here. ipconfig allows you to view the IP configuration settings for a Windows device. There's other functions available in ipconfig, an incredibly powerful tool for troubleshooting network problems. Make sure you're familiar with it so that you can view and change and update information using ipconfig on your Windows computer. So if we were trying to find those Windows utilities, listing all devices connecting to port 443 on a web server was Netstat. Repairing any corrupted operating system files is SFC. Identifying the build number of a Windows 11 Pro laptop is WinVer, and identifying a slow network link between two devices is PathPing. So there is your performance-based question of the month. You may have noticed that you could have gotten one or more of these wrong. So you could have gotten some correct and some incorrect. And unfortunately, CompTIA doesn't tell us that they will always provide you with partial credit, but they do say it's possible. So I would like to believe on a question like this that you could possibly get partial credit on this particular kind of question. So this might be one where you just need to do the best you can and try to get as many points as you can from every one of the questions on your exam. This would be a great way to do it. Hopefully you were able to get some of those matched up on your side as well. Let's shift gears back to multiple choice based questions. I think those should be pretty good to look at. So let's go and look at some multiple choice based question. The next one I have on my list, if we were going to flip over to this, here's our next question. We're back to multiple choice. This question asks, on Monday, an administrator has created a full backup of a server. On Tuesday, they backed up all files changed since Monday. On Wednesday, they again backed up all files changed since Monday. Which of the following would best describe this backup method? Would it be incremental, image, synthetic, differential, or GFS? All real things, all part of your exam objectives. So let's see how you do with this. The question again, on Monday, an administrator has created a full backup of a server. On Tuesday, they backed up all files changed since Monday. On Wednesday, they again backed up all files changed since Monday. Which of the following would best describe this backup method? Is it incremental, image, synthetic, differential, or GFS? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. As I mentioned, all of these answers do come from the exam objectives. And I highly recommend if you see something on here that does not look familiar, maybe there's a term, an abbreviation, or a word where you're just not sure what that means, make a note of it because you'll need to go back to your exam objectives just to make sure that you know exactly what that particular word means and how you would use it in one of today's networks. So have a look and see a number of people are locking in their answers very quickly. I think maybe we either all know this one pretty well or we were willing just to take a stab very quickly because I'm watching the numbers accumulate up closer and closer to at least 100 people answering so far. So we're getting there. Number of you. And obviously, these questions are not in Google, so Google's not going to help you. No Googling. That's not going to work for you. You're going to have to figure this one out on your own. Let's see how you did. That question again asked, on Monday, an administrator has created a full backup of a server. On Tuesday, they backed up all files changed since Monday. On Wednesday, they again backed up all files changed since Monday. Which of the following would best describe this backup method? Is it incremental, image, synthetic, differential, or GFS? And if we look at the results, did not get a majority on this one, but it looks like most people focused on one of two different answers. 45% of you said incremental is what we would look for, and 39% of you said differential is what we want to see. And then it drops immediately to a three-way tie for third place between image, synthetic, and GFS. So let's see if we can have a look at how this might be done. If you're one of the folks that answered D, differential, then you were one of the folks that got this one right. The real key for this one is that we did a full backup. First thing we did was create a full backup. And then on the day following that backup, we then backed up everything that had changed since the full backup. And then if we want to do on the next day, do another backup, we're going to back up everything changed since the full backup. So effectively, once you're finished and go through all of these, the last backup you do contains everything that has changed since the last full backup. Even if the last full backup was yesterday, a week ago, or a month ago, you only need one of two different sets to be able to restore everything. You need the full backup and then your last differential backup, and you're done. You don't need to go through days or weeks of backups that you did. The real key in this question, as some people are mentioning, is that we backed up everything Tuesday that had been changed since the last full backup. And then on Wednesday, we did the same thing. So we keep doing this. Now, one of the downsides of this, of course, is every day the differential backup keeps getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger because things change every day. As we're changing more and more, we're needing to back up more and more every day. So you may find that you're able to have a differential backup go for a week. Some people may find they're only able to do a differential backup for a couple of days because the difference in the differential becomes so broad and so great that they're spending more time on the backup process. They could have just done another full backup in that scenario. So this is why it's a bit of a science with backups and being able to restore those. And I think for if you're someone who's working with backups, you want to be sure you have availability of your data. This is an important consideration to be able to have this here. Differential backup is the one that we were looking at. An incremental backup would be backing up things that were incrementally changed every day. So you would have, if you needed to restore, you would not only need to restore your full backup, but every single one of the incremental backups you've done since the last full backup. So it's a little bit more to work through. We also have three things that people did not choose. An image is effectively a sector by sector or a file by file copy of a machine. So you can effectively take a snapshot, if you will, or a copy in time of everything on a computer and then restore that on a different machine. And as long as those machines are relatively similar in their hardware makeup, you're able to restore just fine to that other system. Especially when you're talking about operating systems, that becomes especially important. And imaging is such a fast way to back up and restore. It's very often used when you're building systems brand new and you want every system to be a cookie cutter, exact duplicate of everything else. Imaging backups work great for that. We also have synthetic backups. You know, one of the things we looked at in that last view was that we were able to grab a full backup and we were able to restore everything by taking the Thursday's differential backup and the last full backup to create the recovery. But since you have all the data here, you could effectively blend those together to create what would effectively be a new full backup without having to take another backup. And that's something that a synthetic backup allows us to have, is we can get a full backup based on a number of the different criteria on those. So synthetic backups can be pretty useful. They'll save a lot of time if it's something you're able to do with your system. And then lastly, you have GFS backups. That is a grandfather, father, and son. That's what that refers to. And it's really referring to taking three different backup types. Usually we talk about this in perspective of a certain amount of time. So for, let's take a month of time, you can have a grandfather backup. And the grandfather backup is maybe the single backup you take every month. So you take 12 grandfather backups a year. And then you might have a father backup that might be one you take every week. So we would have 52 father backups for an entire year. And then you might have a son backup, which means you take a daily backup of that system, and you have, for an entire year, 365 son backups. So these are all independent of each other. And if you need to collect data or find data that you need to restore, you can choose exactly the right backup based on where that data was, when the data was stored, and how you collected all of that information. So that's called a GFS backup, grandfather, father, and son. All of those, of course, make sure you're familiar with those in the CompTIA exam objectives, an incredibly important section on backups and recovery, and you could possibly get questions about that on your exam. And for those of you that answered this question, differential was indeed our correct answer. If you answered D, 39% of you got differential absolutely correct. Let's do another one. I've got more questions for you. Maybe we'll bounce back on this one. This question asks, which control panel applet should be used to change the location of an Outlook data file? Would that be indexing options, administrative tools, mail, user accounts, or system? Which control panel applet should be used to change the location of an Outlook data file? Is that indexing options, administrative tools, mail, user accounts, or system? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You instead want to go to professormustard.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what that is. Maybe some of you do. Maybe some of you have had to do this before. If you've been working with an Outlook data file, that might help you understand exactly what you might want to do. And some of you may not. So this is one where we have to be able to really break down what the different options might be. And knowing the control panel, there's a huge section that talks about all of the different control panel applets you need to know. So make sure you're familiar with those. This is one I think a lot of people do know. I'm seeing the numbers go up relatively quickly. When they start going boom, 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 up so quick, we either really know these answers very well, or this could be the case that we think we know the answer very well. The last question you saw where we were split 50-50, we didn't quite have the same popularity to answering, the quickness to answering that we did in this one. So let's see if you know what this is. The question asks, which control panel applet should be used to change the location of an Outlook data file? Is it indexing options, administrative tools, mail, user accounts, or system? Is it as obvious as we think it is, or is this a curveball? We have to wonder. Let's see what you answered first. If we show the results, we can see that 44% of you say mail is what you would use. We have effectively a two-way tie for second between indexing options and administrative tools. And lastly, with a two-way tie for third place with 10% apiece, user accounts and system. Now, what's interesting with this one is that no single digits. We're sort of all over this distribution and trying to figure out what it could possibly be. But in this case, the real key is understanding what Outlook is. It's important to know first what we're working with. And if it's a data file associated with Outlook, you will find options to be able to manage that data file in your control panel under the Mail applet. Now, if you look at your control panel on your computer at home, you may not even see a Mail icon. It may not even be there. It's just doesn't even exist. And that's because you most likely don't have a mail client like Outlook installed on your system. So this is a nice front end that allows you to manage at least some aspect of the Outlook email database, all from this single applet. The applet itself has not been updated in Windows 11 to have that new UI. So this is literally how it looks in the latest version of Windows. If it looks like it's something that should go back to Windows XP, you're not wrong. It looks exactly the same, I think, as the one that goes back to Windows XP, certainly Windows Vista. But it's a way that you can get access to these configuration options without having to start the entire Outlook client, which of course is the important part of this. So that's where you can change configuration, like where the data files might be. Here are all the different options you have for email. You can put in what your email address might be, and then you can modify this information to be able to say, no, I want to move it to this particular location. And you can see the very long location for this particular data file. It's on my computer. This is not at all unusual, in fact, especially if you worked a lot with Outlook and being able to work with it. You'll very often have to deal with idiosyncrasies of the data file and where it may be located on your system. So that's this is something that's in the CompTIA exam objectives. It's probably not something that you would use a lot, but it is something that when you need to use it, you need to know exactly where that happens to be. And indeed, that is the Mail applet. That's what we call those little icons that are in the control panel. They're not applications. They're sort of mini applications that run in the control panel applet in the control panel, and we refer to them as applets because that's what Microsoft calls them. I guess that's the best reason to call them that. There's other options inside the control panel. For example, you could have chosen indexing options. This tells your operating system what files and directories you should be indexing so that when you do a search on your system, it's able to find everything you'd like. And you might have a certain folder or a certain area of your storage drive that you would not like to be indexed. You can manage that in the indexing options. We also have administrative tools. administrative tools are available to provide additional functions for, as the name implies, administrators. So if you need to have advanced management of an operating system, I won't say they're hidden within the administrative tools, but you have to get into the control panel and then get into administrative tools, and you'll be presented with yet another list of applets inside of that. And of course, you have to know everything that's in the control panel, and you have to know all the important applets that are inside the administrative tools as well. And then we have the last two. User accounts is where you can add a new user, change the password of a current user, or change some of the settings specific to a user. And then lastly, system, which is where you would find information on the system configuration, the version of Windows you happen to be using. This is where you would enable or disable system protection. It's all in that system applet inside of your control panel. In this case, the 47% of you, which pretty close to the majority, did choose the correct answer, which is the mail option. That's what you want to look for inside of your control panel if you ever need to change the location of where you're pointing to with your Outlook data file. Hopefully that's one that you were familiar with. You might run into that when you're doing some troubleshooting. Well, as you've already seen, we've covered a number of different topics on the A+ exam. And if you were to look at my entire course, the entire course is 137 videos. I sometimes don't believe we got through all of those. It's about 19 hours long to be able to have everything that's in all of those videos. And I recognize that many people will go through every single one of these videos and watch every minute of every video, but not everybody has that kind of time. So one of the things I did was take all of the information in these videos, all of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the tables, and I put them into a single document. These are my course notes. These course notes provide you with a breakdown of everything that's in these videos because it's effectively a printed version of all of the videos. Now, obviously, it doesn't replace watching the videos or reading your book or doing hands-on or your practice exams, but it does give you a way that you're able to at least go through the data that you had previously learned. It's sort of a nice, quick reference guide if you're looking to figure out what you should be doing. Here's the digital version of the course notes because I have both a PDF version and a version that you can get in a printed form. That was the one that I showed here. Well, except I print them straight up, and you can see it has exactly what you would find for the 1102 exam. Plenty to find in there. If you buy the Core 1 notes and Core 2 notes together, there's also a little bit of a discount there. So you might want to think about doing that if you're trying to get those course notes. Find out more about these on my website at professormesser.com/1102notes, or simply follow the links in the pull-down menus at the top of the website to find your set of course notes. And for everybody who's already purchased these course notes, thank you so much for your support. This does help keep all of this craziness going that we have here, this experiment that has been suddenly gotten out of the lab, and who knows what this is doing at this point. I'm just sort of hanging on and trying to make sure I can hold on to how fast this thing happens to be moving. The course notes are available. Thanks for your support there, and we appreciate you having a look at those on the website. Let's do another question. Here's the next one on our list that asks, an attacker has gained access to a building by walking behind an employee through an access door without the employee's knowledge. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Would that be piggybacking, impersonation, tailgating, phishing, or shoulder surfing? An attacker has gained access to a building by walking behind an employee through an access door without the employee's knowledge. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Is it piggybacking, impersonation, tailgating, phishing, and shoulder surfing? It's got to be one of those, right? So have a look. See what you can go through to find exactly what you're looking for. That might help you too. Whenever I start going through lists like this, I try to start taking out the things that I know it could not possibly be. And that might help if I'm taking a stab, if I'm taking a guess, maybe I'll take an educated guess. Because getting it right by luck is the same thing as getting it right if you happen to know the answer. So either way, you get the points. So try to make yours the best possible answer that you can give on the exam. And if you are taking the exam, make sure you don't leave anything blank. Make sure you're always answering these questions. That becomes important too. So let's have a look at how things are going here. A number of you getting those answers locked in right now for these attack types. Security is a big part of the 220.11.02 exam. Make sure you're familiar with everything that's in that security section. It might also help you when you get into Network Plus, Security Plus. Both of those also have a section on security, so make sure you're familiar with those too. Let's see how you did with this one. The question again asked, an attacker has gained access to a building by walking behind an employee through an access door without the employee's knowledge. Which of the following would best describe this attack type? Is that piggybacking, impersonation, tailgating, phishing, or shoulder surfing? And let's see what you answered. 75% of you say that is tailgating. 18% say piggybacking. And then single digits very quickly to shoulder surfing, phishing, and impersonation. So effectively a three-way tie for third place. It's really between tailgating and piggybacking, and tailgating has 74% of the vote, 75 now, that maybe we're thinking that could be it. Now, let's look at these two terms, though, because they are similar, but there are slight differences between the two. For example, tailgating is when you can get access to a building, unauthorized access to a building or location or room, and you got that unauthorized access by simply following an attacker, or the attacker follows the person into a door without that person knowing. You can think of this as you're in your car. We often think of tailgating as somebody who's driving very close to your back bumper. But if you don't look in your rearview mirror, you have no idea they're even there. It's something the user has no idea is occurring. They're just going along, walking through the door, and then just before the door closes, you have that cut when the person puts their foot in the door. And the camera shows the person slowly opening the door and finding their way in. That is the attacker using tailgating as a way to gain access to a particular area. If it was piggybacking, then they are going through the same process of getting access into the building, but the authorized person is actually letting them in. They know that they're coming in. You can think of this as someone who's physically piggybacking you. They jump on your back and you're going to carry them in. You know they're there. They're on your back. You can't miss that they're there. So the legitimate person inside of the building probably not following the right security protocol and simply going, oh, do you need to come in? Well, come on in. No, we don't need to check in at the desk. You don't need a visitor badge. I think I've seen you around here before. You're not going to do anything bad, are you? And in they go. And this is one where I mentioned in my video, all you need to carry is a bunch of food. So if you just pretend that you are there to deliver food and your arms are full, but who isn't going to let food in the door? Especially if it smells amazing. Oh, I'm here for a delivery on the 5th floor. Oh, sure. Come on in. Oh, thanks. I can't even open the door because my arms are full. You got plenty of excuses and reasons to get in. That is piggybacking. And that's why if we look at these two answers, piggybacking did get 18% of the vote. But in this case, obviously, the correct answer is going to be tailgating. And 75% of you said tailgating is exactly what you would be doing. So hopefully that's given you some perspective and something you can remember after working through this on what the differences might be between those two, because on your exam, very similar to this question, you might be asked to answer those two questions as well. Know the difference between both of them. Well, we've got some time for more questions, so let's do some more. I've got another one ready to go. This question asks, a Windows computer displays the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following could potentially resolve this issue? Would we increase virtual memory? Should we delete all duplicated documents? Should we upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive? Should we reset system protection? Or should we clear the browser cache? A Windows computer displays the message, your computer is low on memory. Which of the following could potentially resolve this issue? Should we increase virtual memory, delete all duplicated documents, upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive, reset the system protection, or clear the browser cache? If you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. It's obviously in the troubleshooting section of the 220-1102 exam, and there are many different things you have to know how to troubleshoot. Fortunately, it's a finite list. You can imagine trying to troubleshoot a computer. Do you imagine if you just have everything on your computer and you have to troubleshoot every possible scenario? There's probably hundreds of different things that could go wrong with a system. Fortunately, in the exam objectives, it's a list of about 15, 16 different things, 15 or 20. So have a look at that and see what you think the answer is. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to be able to know where you can put in your answer. See if you happen to know what this is. A lot of you must know what this is because I've finished my description of this and we're already up above 100 different responses, up to 110. So it must be well known. You must have had this problem before and you've had to troubleshoot it. And here's one of the things you did. But the obvious answer may not be in this list. So you may have had to go with your second most obvious answer, which, by the way, is a common technique in the exam where you think you know what the answer is and then wait, that answer isn't even in the list. And that's why this question does ask which of the following could potentially resolve this issue, because you can only choose from the following. You can't maybe do the thing that you thought might be the most popular response because that's not one of your available answers. Let's see how you did with this one. Should we increase virtual memory, delete all duplicated documents, upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive, reset the system protection, or clear the browser cache? Wow, we're just not sure. We're all over the place. 36% of us say increase the virtual memory, but 30% of us say clear the browser cache. That's what you would do. 14% say delete all duplicated documents. 14% also say upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive. And then lastly, 4% say you should reset system protection. So low memory warnings is something that hopefully you will not have to see on your computer. Here's an example of one you might get. This says your computer's low on memory. To restore enough memory for programs to work correctly, save your files and then close or restart all open programs, which, by the way, probably not the best answer. I think it might help a little bit to do that, especially if there's a certain application that is just using up all of the memory on your system. That is something you could possibly do. But if you're trying to start more and more applications, you'll find that they're not going to start properly because your computer is indeed low on memory. Now, another important thing to keep in mind, and this is something that is often mistaken by not just computer users, but computer technologists alike, is that when we refer to memory, we're referring to the random access memory. We're referring to the memory modules, the DDR memory modules that are inside your computer. We're not talking about your hard drive. We're not talking about an SSD drive. We're not talking about an M.2 flash drive. We're not talking about a USB key. We are talking about the RAM that's inside of a system. And so when you start looking at the different options, if you want to see what's using all of your RAM, then you'll want to bring up something like Task Manager and have a look at memory utilization. It'll tell you how much memory is being used and break it out by application. So incredibly useful to be able to see that. And you'll know immediately if your system says your system is low on memory. So this is something that can really help you determine why is it low on memory, and that might give you more options for troubleshooting this as you go forward. Now, one of the things that's interesting about Windows and many modern operating systems is that they have different things that they can do if they run out of that physical RAM. One of the things that Windows can do is have a look at the applications that you're not currently using, and it will take the section of memory associated with that application, and it will take it out of memory and put it onto your storage drive. Because you're not using it, we can free up that memory space, but it has to have some place on the storage drive to be able to store that information, at least temporarily, because if you happen to click back to that application, it has to pull everything back off of the storage drive and put it back in memory. Because obviously, memory is where everything happens. Nothing changes on your system unless it's in memory. So if we're using an application, that application is in memory. So where do we store this on the storage drive? Where does it put this information on the storage drive? Well, it puts it in a section in Windows called virtual memory. Virtual memory is It's the fancy name. Sometimes you'll hear people refer to it as swap memory because that's what it's doing. It's taking everything in memory and it's swapping it to files. So temp files, swap memory, virtual memory, it's all effectively the same thing on your system. The official term in Windows, though, is virtual memory. And in fact, if you look inside of the performance options inside of your control panel, it even refers to it right there on the screen as virtual memory. And then you can adjust how much space is on your storage drive for virtual memory. In most cases, Windows sets this amount automatically, but you might want to add or remove more virtual memory depending on what you were trying to do. So if your computer's low on memory, maybe we just need to have Windows swap more things out of your physical memory and put that information into virtual memory. But what if your virtual memory is very small, or maybe it's already filled up? We need to increase the amount of virtual memory so that we can then take that information and store more of it on our storage drive, which would free up just enough room perhaps to run additional applications in your random access memory. So let's go through these other options, though. Why would these other options not be a good choice for this problem? We'll start with upgrade to a larger capacity M.2 drive, which 15% of you chose. But as I mentioned right at the beginning, the M.2 drive is your storage drive. It's your SSD. That has nothing to do with memory. That is not your RAM. That is your long-term or perpetual storage drive. That's not going to help you if you're running out of memory on your system. So that would not be a good choice for resolving this problem. Secondly is delete all duplicated documents. Same problem, obviously, because duplicated documents are using up space that's on your computer, and duplicated documents, freeing them up and freeing up more drive space isn't going to free up any additional memory. So that's not going to help you either when you start working through it. And when you start breaking out the different options as well with the other things that are here, we've got 29% of you said to clear the browser cache. Doesn't that fix everything? I thought clearing the browser cache fixed everything because everybody on every website always says, oh, are you having problems? You need to clear the browser cache. But for this particular problem with low memory, clearing the browser cache is not going to help you because the browser cache is not stored in memory. It's stored on your storage drive. So that's not going to help you at all. Not just enough, it's not going to help you at all. It's not going to do anything for you as far as RAM storage. And lastly, resetting system protection. Same type of scenario. If you reset system protection, it clears out or deletes all of the previous restore points that are on your system, which is great if you get a message that you are low on drive space, but it does not help you when you're trying to figure out, am I having a problem with memory? So in this case, we're really showing there's a difference between RAM and storage space. And the RAM is memory. The storage space is your drive, SSD, hard drive, or something similar. So in this case, there's really only one of these answers that has anything to do with memory. And so the answer obviously is going to be increase the amount of virtual memory so that you can swap more out of your physical memory, which would then leave more space available for applications to work. That's the one we would choose. That's the one we want, is the increased virtual memory. Answer A is the correct answer. 39% of you got that one absolutely correct. And that's one that might help you if you run into a memory problem, especially working with those systems that use a lot of memory. Or as people are saying in the chat, you've got users that like to bring up 25 different tabs inside of their browser, and all 25 of those tabs are going to be using up some type of memory. It'd be nice if we could swap some of those websites out that we're not currently looking at, and we would swap them out to virtual memory if we only had more virtual memory space. Oh, wait, let's increase it. And now we have more room to swap some of that information out. That's the choice we would best choose for something like this. Now, if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that gives you a message that says you were here, I certify that you were here, and it's digitally signed, so we know that it came from me and that nobody changed anything that's inside of that message. The way that you can earn that email is to follow these instructions. So go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put February 2023 Core 2 Study Group or something similar. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month increase virtual memory. It's actually 3 words this month. Increase virtual memory is our super secret code words of the month. And then you can, of course, put anything else you would like into that message. I do read through every single one of those. But once you're done with that, send that message away. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but I'll send you an email that indeed certifies that you were here to see this particular webinar category CEU. So that can give you something to work through. When I mentioned earlier that the obvious answer wasn't here, that's because if somebody's getting your computer is low on memory, let's just add more memory. Let's upgrade the memory in our system. And in fact, you can see that wasn't one of the options. That is something that's commonly done in these exams where the most obvious answer is not going to be one that's available to you. And if you wanted to take that into the real world of working, you might say, well, boss, we need to upgrade the memory in the system. We don't have budget for that. But it just needs a little bit of memory. It's only a couple $100. Wait, nope, we can't do that right now. Later, we'll worry about that. What can you do in the meantime to get us through? Thus, this question is born. So that's why questions like this, although it seems like the obvious answers are simply not put on the screen, that's because in practical use, the most obvious answers sometimes are not available to you. So don't worry so much about why and worry about what's here and be able to answer the question the best you can. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do another question. We have more here. So let's see if we can get one more in before we are done. Here we go. This next question asks, see if I can get it up and running. There we go. This question asks, a system administrator needs to run a script on both Windows and Linux servers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would that be PowerShell, VBScript, batch file, Python, or shell script? A system administrator needs to run a script on both Windows and Linux servers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it PowerShell, VBScript, batch file, Python, or shell script? If you think you know the answer, there's your link, professormesser.com/QA. And don't forget to put the answer in that link. And please don't put the answer in the chat room. On the chat room, people said, did I say February 2022? Oh, yeah, I'm going to say 2022, probably until July. So you know what I mean, though. In fact, you could put February 2022. I know what you mean. So, in fact, I'll just assume you have the same problem I do, which is probably not correct, but it makes me feel better. And that's really what's important to me. So that's where we're going with that one. See if you know the answer. Lock in the answer. Somebody knows what year it is, and it's certainly not me in this particular case. Remember, of course, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We want to put the answer right there on your screen. There's the link. That's where it is. That's the one you want to choose, professormesser.com/QA. The QA, of course, stands for, I don't know. It stands for something. QA stands for something. Quality assurance, professormesser.com/QA. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what it is. See if you know the answer. A lot of people putting their answers in. Obviously, this is an important answer. For some of you that are working through the idea of scripting and automation and working through the details, this is really an important question because you may be asked when you're working through it, what should you do? What would it be? What are the different things available? Your boss comes up to you and says, okay, we got these Linux machines, we got Windows machines. I need you to create a script that's going to do this. Go. Well, you don't want to create 2 scripts. I just want to create 1 script. What would I use? So that's what it would be. I want to thank the chat room for telling me that QA stands for question and answer. That makes perfect sense now that I think about it. That's exactly what it is, isn't it? See if you know what this is. Lock in your answer. Let's see how you answered this one. The question asks, a system administrator needs to run a script on both Windows and Linux servers. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it PowerShell, VBScript, batch file, Python, or shell script? What did you put? Let's see. 49% of you say the answer is Python. That's what that would be. Python would be the right answer. 49% of you chose that one. Is that the right one? We'll find out in a moment. 18% said shell script. 16% say PowerShell. 8% say VBScript. And 9% say batch file. So let's see what I think the answer is. And the chat room's already ready to fight me on this one. I don't know why. We'll step through each one, know why, but Python would be the correct answer for this one. Python is the perfect type of scripting language that can be used across multiple operating systems. If you're running Mac OS and Linux and Windows, there's Python available for those operating systems and others. You can write a single Python script that could effectively be used across multiple operating systems without changing a thing. And that, in this particular question, was exactly what we were looking for. Python is available across so many different operating systems. It really has become sort of the de facto scripting language for cloud-based services. And because of that, we're starting to use it more across other types of operating systems and for other uses as well. Python is what we would use to be able to do that. That's the choice that I have here. And in fact, 48% of you say Python is exactly the correct answer. That's what would provide that functionality, is Python. And so if you're somebody who needs to create a script across multiple operating systems, that's the way to do it. So the real question becomes, why are these other answers not the right answers? And I think there's a little bit of an argument about this as we go through it. And certainly I can see a perspective on this, but let's sort of break down how this works with this. PowerShell, of course, is 16% of the answers. PowerShell is one that is a Windows-specific scripting language. So since we need to run this on Linux, there's no PowerShell or limited PowerShell functionality, if you will. I'm sure somebody's probably written some type of PowerShell front end for Linux at this point, but it's certainly not native to the operating system and certainly would not be as comprehensive as the PowerShell that's available inside of Windows, if there even is such a thing at this point. I'm sure somebody will send me a note in the chat room about that one. But PowerShell we tend to think of as a Windows-only scripting language. It does Windows-only type functions. You can control services. You can modify registry entries. PowerShell, extremely powerful. In fact, the more you know about PowerShell, the more you're going to be able to do in this industry. So I always tell people two of the most important skills that you might want to use or have in your pocket that you will use for the rest of your career is knowing how to automate and script in both PowerShell and Python. And then if you can do a little bit of shell scripts and batch files and PHP and other things, that certainly helps as well. We also have 17% of you that say shell script. The term shell script is a Linux type of script. And certainly there are Linux front ends and Linux things that you can do. You can do Linux-ish kinds of things in Windows, but that is an additional piece that you must install into the operating system. It's certainly not native to Windows. In fact, not very few of your Windows devices, if you look around, have anything that would even allow you to run a shell script. So that's certainly not our best answer here. And in fact, that's probably not the one that most people would gravitate to either, because it's just not native to the Windows operating system. If you heard the term shell script, we're really thinking about Mac OS, Linux, or similar operating systems. You also have 9% that said batch file. Batch file is sort of the shell script for Windows. Batch file is an automation that you would run at the Windows command prompt. You can think of this as the precursor to PowerShell. Batch files generally don't have direct access to operating system functions unless you have some type of special library. A batch file is not going to be able to enable or disable certain services or enable or change things inside of a registry unless you manually run the applications inside of the batch file that are going to do that for you, but it's not integrated into the batch file itself. And then 8% of you say VB script. That stands for Visual Basic Scripting Language. It's something you can run at the Windows desktop or in Windows applications, primarily Windows Office type applications, but it's not something you will find in Linux. So that's not what we would use to be able to run a script on both Windows and Linux servers. The one that is the right answer, the one that's probably the most obvious for everyone, is indeed answer D, Python. And about half of you, 50% of you, got that one absolutely correct. That's what we were looking for, is the automation to be able to do this. You'll notice I used a very specific terminology when I was referring to using Python. I referred to this as a scripting language. And although I guess technically speaking, if you wanted to really talk about technical terms, whenever you get into looking at where you would be able to use these different functions, we'll sometimes refer to these as programming languages, but I tend to refer to a programming language as something where you are building an application. It's something that application developers would use a programming language. And if you're building an app for a mobile device or you're building an app for a website, you're using a programming language to build that application. I try to distinguish the differences between full-blown advanced programming languages and scripting languages by referring to them differently, so that you will know immediately if I say scripting language, we're talking about automation, we're talking about being able to make things happen behind the scenes and manage your systems over on the IT side. If we're talking about a programming language, I'm usually referring to something on the computer science side. And of course, as we know, neither of those two worlds really connect very much. There's just a very small sliver of likeness between both the IT side and the computer science side. If you need a program built, you send it over to the computer science folks. If you're in IT, you're not going to be doing any programming, but you're probably going to be doing a lot of scripting. So that gives you at least the terms that I use, the nomenclature that I use associated with that. That's what I am referring to. Well, we've already seen today that the questions on this exam can be many and varied, and there's different ideas about how questions can be asked. As I mentioned in the pre-show, it's very hard to find a set of practice questions that have been properly designed to give you the most accurate representation of what's on your exam. And the more and more I look around at different websites and different offerings, for some reason, the people who are writing these questions don't seem to have them accurately represent the exam objectives. Why? I don't know, but they don't. So I thought what I would do is write my own set of practice questions where I know every question has the same style and flavor of the CompTIA exam so that you can get familiar with the cadence and the type of questions that you might get. And then lastly, I also want to have questions that are accurate, that really focus on problems and objectives that come from the exam objectives. And I think if that's where you are trying to get to, if you're trying to find a set of completely accurate questions, you should look at my practice questions book. This is a book that has 3 separate practice exams inside of it. All of these questions are up to date with the latest set of CompTIA exam objectives. And so that's why I wanted to make this available to you. Maybe we should do one. I've got a question here that we could go through. Let's move over to my practice exams book and let's try it out. So here's another one. This last question we'll do is directly from the book. This is the PDF version of the book that I have available. There's both digital versions and physical versions available. The physical book kind of big. But this question asks, and again, no answers in the chat room. This question asks, a user is attempting to airdrop a document to an associate, but they do not see any destination devices in their list of available airdrop locations. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it a low battery, a rotation lock is enabled, we have low storage space, or Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are disabled? So one of the things you can do, because this is a PDF, most PDF readers allow you to do some type of annotation. So if you think you know the answer, you can simply annotate the PDF and change what's there. That's certainly one way to do it, or you can draw on it yourself. But sometimes you'd like to know the answer. And I do have a page that just gives you the answer. If you just want to know if it's A, B, C, or D, you can click Quick Answer. This is a PDF, so I put these links inside of the PDF. So if you want the details, you can click on the details and go to the page where the details are. Because if you start looking at the practice exams, there's a lot there. There are a lot of questions for these to go through. And if you're somebody who's trying to figure out, where am I going to find the answers to all of these? This is what you're going to want to do, is go to my exam objective or the practice exams and look to see in the exam objectives where those came from. And when I'm looking through the answers on here, this was question number 11 that talked about airdrop. When we click the full and complete set of detailed answers, you'll get to see that the answer is indeed D. I think most people were probably looking at that in the chat room, that Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are disabled. And of course, I tell you why I think that's the right answer. But here's my problem when I take these books and take these questions and take these practice exams, I don't always get the right answer. And I want to know why the answer I chose wasn't considered to be the right answer. So what I did in this book is take every single incorrect answer and I tell you why that's not the right answer. So that even if you get a question wrong, you're getting feedback on why that question is wrong. And perhaps even more importantly, you can now understand the technologies that were part of the incorrect answers. Because, of course, on your exam, one of these incorrect answers might be the right answer to a question that they ask. So I always tell people, if you're going through my book and you're looking at this, make sure you read through all of the incorrect answers, even if you get a question right. That's something that might help you. And then lastly, if you didn't even understand the question, I have at the very bottom a QR code and a direct link where you can watch the video associated with the question that I just asked. So if the technology that you're seeing in the question is something you weren't expecting, you know it's associated with a particular exam objective, and you can watch the training video that is specific to that exam objective, bring everything back around full circle. That is what is in my book. And of course, your PDF reader has a back button. You may not even realize it, but it does. And then you can go back to where you started and then continue the process of going through the book and all the different options with all of the other questions that happen to be there. That is my practice exams book. If you'd like to see more about that, you can find it on my website. There's one link, professormesser.com/core2pe, or you follow the links at the top of the page. The digital version, of course, is something you can download for free or download immediately, and it comes with for free the physical edition. So if you get the physical edition, you want it shipped to you, I'll ship worldwide, you can download the digital edition while you're waiting for this to get delivered. And of course, it contains exactly the same information as the digital version, so you can get up and running very, very quickly. That is my practice exams book. Well, as I mentioned when we started this out, is that everything in here is associated with the exam objectives. And that's incredibly important because your exam is really going to be focused on the exam objectives. Very rarely does CompTIA go outside the scope of the objectives. So much so that I always tell you, if you know everything that's in this set of objectives, you're going to pass your exam without a problem. That's how important these objectives are. So make sure you download the objectives. You can follow the link that's on my site, professormesser.com/objectives, or simply type into your favorite search engine, CompTIA exam objectives. It will take you right to the page. They are free. You can download them and use them as a checklist, use them as a study guide. Make sure you know what will be expected of you when you walk into that exam room by grabbing that set of exam objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. In March, we're even doubling up a bit. We've got A+ study groups on the 7th and the 9th of March for Core 1 and Core 2, respectively. And we've got a Network Plus study group on the 14th and a Security Plus study group on the 16th. A lot going on in March. We'd love for you to come back for any one of those. If you ever want to know when the next live event is going to be, it's always on our calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar. We've also got an events calendar that's in our Discord. So there's multiple places you can go to find out when the next live event is going to be. Well, we're not done yet, even though I'm finished with the first hour of Q&A. Stick around for our after show where you can ask me any question you would like in the chat room. I don't know that I'll answer any question you like, but I'll consider every question you ask. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams on the website. Follow the links on the pull-down menus or go to professormesser.com/1102success. Don't forget about the vouchers. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. If you're in the U.S. or Canada, you can get your vouchers at a discounted rate by visiting us at professormesser.com/vouchers. In some cases, you're saving $20 or more per voucher. That might be something that can help you quite a bit. And of course, we're always doing something around here. Visit us on Discord, follow our pop quiz questions on Twitter and Instagram. And if you really, really liked this video, and maybe even if you only sort of like this video, we would love it if you would give it a thumbs up, and we would just be over the moon if you came to our YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. That would make our day as well. And it's something you can do for free to help support what we do here at Messer Studios. Thanks for being here. Stick around for the after show. We've got a lot more to do, but I'll take all of your questions next. Stay on the line. And thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the Core 2 A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's see. We'll take a sip. Let's bring this around. There we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the after show. We got a lot. And there's some great questions already coming in. I need to bring my Q&A over to this side. And we will talk about where you can ask these questions. If you're on my website at professormesser.com/live, then you'll see there's a chat that's embedded on the page. And if you are on YouTube, there's also a chat. It's the same chat. So no matter where you are watching this, that's the chat that you should use to be able to ask these questions. And I'm just going to take questions from the chat room. And as we're going through, I'll be able to answer anything you'd like to go through and figure out what these are. We'll kind of skip the easy stuff. We'll go straight to the harder questions and see what different options might be. Let's start right now with a question that comes from the doctor. The doctor asks, there it is, should I take the 1101 and 1102 at the same time? Well, obviously you can't do them at the same time. You have to take one of them first and one of them second. I think that's not what you were asking, though. I think you were asking on the same day, which is a very common question. And my very common answer to you is do not do that. Why would you do something like that? The only time where it would make sense, sort of, to take both the 1101 and 1102 on the same day would be if you were already very familiar with these technologies. Maybe we had someone who was in our study group a couple days ago who had been in the industry for 20 years. They knew operating systems back and forth, maybe some of the hardware they were working on. They knew things about networking. They understood the security ideas. They just needed to grab the few things they didn't know about, and then they took both of the exams on the same day. And it took them about 2 weeks to study. So that gives you an idea of how someone who already knows this content, and maybe you're working somewhere and they say, you have to go get your A+. But I've been in the industry for 20 years. Doesn't matter. You need your A+. Okay. Spend a couple weeks, fill in the gaps. I'll go take both of them on the same day and we're done. That is a remarkably unusual situation. I would highly recommend that you never take both of these exams on the same day. And that's because the 1101 and the 1102 have very little overlap. Someone mentioned in my chat room the other day on Discord, oh, doesn't the 1102 build on the 1101? It does not, really. No, very little of that is a building process. They are designed to be standalone exams. And so I tell people, pick one. Doesn't matter which one you do first. But let's say you pick the 1101. Study everything on the 1101, understand every single exam objective from the 1101, go take your 1101 exam, pass your 1101 exam, and you can now forget all of that and now shift gears over to the 1102. Maybe don't forget it, but you know what I mean. Now shift gears over to the 1102, and now the 1102 exam is where you can focus on the 1102 exam objectives. You can go take the 1102 exam. You see the idea here. It is your best bet, the best way for you to pass these exams is one at a time. Combining the two together is really not your best chance for passing both of these exams. And that's why I tell people don't do that. Take them one at a time, and I think you'll be okay. That should be your goal anyway. And along those same lines, Mark asks, all right, so are literally all of the DOS, Mac, and Linux command line commands fair game questions? Well, not all of them. Fortunately, we know exactly what could be asked of you on the exam. And what could be asked of you, let's have a look. I've got the exam objectives up on my screen. Here they are. That's not them. What happened there? Here we go. Let's put me up here too. There we are. So that is the set of exam objectives. Maybe we'll make it a little bit bigger for anyone who may be looking at this. And let's go to the next page. Let's see. Can I just cycle through? We can. So on this, we'll go through the instructions, the test details, the objectives. Here's our first section, operating systems. And section 1.1, identify basic features of Microsoft Windows editions. You need to know the Windows 10 editions for Home, Pro, Pro for Workstations, and Enterprise. You need to understand the feature differences, which can include domain access versus workgroup, desktop styles and user interface, availability of remote desktop, and so on. You can see all these bullets. And as I scroll through here, here's a good example of this. Given a scenario, use the appropriate Microsoft command line tools. So for Windows, here are the command lines you need to know. So it's not every possible command that you would know, but you could be asked about any one of these. If I keep scrolling, and I'm really just going to scroll all the way down to section 11 in that first domain, 1.11 are identify common features and tools of the Linux client/desktop OS. Here are the Linux commands you need to know. So that's it. At least we have a finite group. You don't have to know everything that's in DOS, everything that's on Linux, but you have to know the ones that are listed in the exam objectives. That's the important part. So I think if you're someone who is earlier working through this and trying to figure out the details, that's of course where you should focus your efforts. Maybe that will help you too as you're trying to figure out what you should do. I see this all the time where people will look at this enormous pages and pages and pages of commands, and they're asking me about a trib, and they're asking me about the diff command. They're asking me about, like, that's not on your exam objectives. You're not going to be asked about that. CompTIA is not even going to be on the exam. Why are you studying that? Are those important commands to know? They could be, but not for this exam. And our goal is to get you passed and get your A+ certification. So that's why. That's where I focus. And I think that's an important consideration as well. Jonathan says, thanks a ton for all your hard work. I passed my Security Plus January the 20th of 2023, just a couple weeks ago. Network Plus, Network Plus on December 2nd of 2022, and A+ on July 16th, 2022. There's your trifecta. There's all three. And Jonathan says, I just landed my first service desk gig. More importantly, got a job at the end of it. You got to have that job. So, Jonathan, thank you for your $5 super chat. And more importantly, thanks for telling everybody else your story, letting people know what it takes to be able to get through this. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is an upside. We're going through this process of earning these certifications ostensibly for some type of reason. There's got to be a means to that end. This is the means and that job is the end. So congratulations on your new job. Congratulations on your certifications. Thank you for your super chat. Well, can't wait to see what happens next. This is just the beginning. It's all uphill from here. It's all like a rocket ship. So just hang on, learn as much as you can, and get ready for the next step. Get ready to level up. Whatever that's going to be, we'll find out. But that's the goal in this position, is you're constantly leveling up in IT to do something bigger and perhaps more lucrative. In my perspective, that's an important part of this. Other questions. Let's see if we can grab some other questions. So earlier there was a question that talked about, here we go, talked about memory, talked about running out of memory and the different options that were available. And the RAM recommendation on the earlier question regarding memory, there was no RAM recommendation in there. There was virtual memory. It said increase the amount of virtual memory. That was the only answer that had anything to do with memory. All the other answers had to do with storage space. And so the key for that question and answer was me making sure you knew the difference between memory and storage. And that's why I chose those specific answers. I even mentioned, obviously, when you see a message that says you're running out of memory, my first response would be, let's put more memory in this system. But as I mentioned, that was not one of the available answers, so can't choose that one. And in fact, in some situations, in some real world situations, you may not be able to buy memory to put into that system. So that's why I think that's a good one to at least focus on, something that can help you. I think that is absolutely where that virtual memory might come from. Let's have a look at some more questions that came in. I think we have some more that folks have stepped through. See if I can get my YouTube chat to be nice to me. It's being nice today. Generally speaking, the entire flow of the live stream is being much better than it was today, so that's good. What other things? Other questions that are in here. Let's see what else. I do want to bring up Alexander that says, hey, Professor Messer, just passed the A+ certification. Thank you. I didn't do anything. You're the one that did it. You're the one that studied. You're the one that was up late nights. You were the one that made all those notes. You were the one that went to the testing center, and you were the one that made your way through it. So congratulations on passing both of those A+ exams. It's got to feel good, right? So the next step, go get that job, go get that better job. That is exactly where you can go. And being able to work through it. Other questions, and of course, congratulations, Alexander, and thank you for letting us know. Always love hearing those stories, and when people pass their exams, I cannot get enough of it. So thank you for letting us know and putting that in there. I'm glad I was able to see it, going through all of the list of things. Here's a pretty common question. I'm 42 years old. Is my mind still able to learn new things? I don't know. Whenever I make it to 42, I'll let you know. If I'm able to, fortunately, there is some validity to the that an old dog not learning new tricks, but there actually works the other way too. Is that sometimes an old dog can learn a lot of new tricks, and in this case, I'm not a dog. I'm a human, so that's probably why that falls apart once you get to a certain point. Absolutely. In fact, with IT, there's never a point where you're going to stop learning. In IT, you never know everything. There's never a way that you will ever be able to know everything you need to know technically about a certain bit of technology. There's just no way. There's so much to know and so much to do. And as someone who has been in the IT career, for everything that I've done in my career has been related to IT. Every single bit of my career is constant learning, constant understanding, constant training. I used to work a lot with third-party, and well, not third-party, but directly for manufacturers of hardware and software. We would go to training at least once a quarter, and usually at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. Everybody was flying out to a location to sit in a room and have developers and product managers tell us about new features, new capabilities, or just to give us a review of core technical topics. Because there's no way someone knows everything there is to know about OSPF. And if you're wondering why I say that, go look at the OSPF RFC. OSPF is such a huge standard, and it's implemented differently on every single router, it seems. In fact, different versions of different routers use and implement OSPF in different ways because some have different features of OSPF that they provide and some don't. Well, you need to understand the nuances of that. More learning for you, more training, more things you have to know. So no, you're going to be constantly learning new things really for the rest of your career. So there's never going to be a time where you get to sit down and think, okay, I'm done. I don't have to now memorize anything. No, that never happens. That never works. I don't know if we'll bring religion into this, but I'll take the response or the super chat from Austin. Thank you, Austin, for the $5 super chat. It says, I started watching your courses prior to exiting the military to provide for college or prepare for college. You're doing God's work by providing all of this content for free. Well, something is going right then. So if you're able to use this information, it's able to help you in any way, I feel like we've been able to accomplish something here. So thank you for your super chat. Thank you for the encouragement. I'm glad you were able to use the videos and help you along with getting that job out of the military. And thanks for your service. I think that's a great way to take advantage of these videos and use them. That's one of the many reasons why we put them online for free. No registration. Nothing is held back. Nothing's behind a paywall. They're just out there. And then we do these live streams as well so that you can get more context on everything that happens to be there. Let's see what else we have here. Now, this is more of a logistics question from Jermaine, who asks, can the A+ test be taken at any time of the year? Yes, it can. In fact, it used to be that you could only take the exam at a testing center. So you had to go to a testing center. The testing center had to have availability. There had to be a slot, a chair open for you in their test room, and they had to be open. So very often on a weekend or a holiday, you were not able to take the exams. Now, of course, you're able to not only take the exams in a testing center, which I still feel is the best way to take the exam, but you could take the exam at home through the online testing service. So the same voucher and the same process, the same exam experience for both. But for online, you can be at home. So if your testing center is closed, if it's 3 a.m, if it's on a holiday, doesn't matter. 24/7, these exams are almost always available as long as they have slots and you can schedule yourself in. You can take the exam whenever you would like and take them on any time or day of the year. So you don't have to worry about it. So if you work the overnight shift and you're usually asleep during the day when the testing centers are open, no problem. Just take it online. There are idiosyncrasies. There are things about taking it online that are important to know. So I highly recommend, if you're planning to take your exam online and you've never taken an exam online before, go read some of the experiences from people in the CompTIA subreddit. That's reddit.com/r/CompTIA, or just search for CompTIA subreddit or CompTIA Reddit. You'll find it. People will constantly put their experiences they had taking the online version of the exam, because sometimes people don't realize if you drop something on the floor and you move out your head goes right here while you were picking up the thing, and you go outside the camera, they will immediately stop the exam. And if you don't have enough points to pass, you've now failed the exam and you have to buy another voucher. Or if somebody walks into the room and walks behind you, your exam is canceled. If you talk during the exam is canceled. If you have something on your desk that shouldn't be there, the exam is canceled. There have even been examples that people have mentioned where they were wearing a watch, and at the beginning of the exam, the proctor sent messages in the chat that said, you need to take the watch off and move it away from the desk. So the person took the watch off, went away from the desk, came back, started the exam, and then in the middle of the exam was revoked. And they said, well, you took the watch off and you left the camera. Yeah, but you told me to leave the camera. It's another one of those examples of, yes, they told you, yes, they canceled it. Now you have to go through this support process to hopefully get another voucher so that you can take the exam again. You have to be ready for that. Had they known, they would have taken the watch and kind of put it over there without leaving the camera view, but they didn't know that. So if you're prepared for that, then you're not going to run into those situations. So that's why I tell people, go read other people's experiences. I think that's pretty important if you're going to be doing something like that. That's just so irritating. This is a really good example. Toztec says, I had 2 instances across different exams. First, talking to myself was a no-no. As it turns out, you can't talk to yourself in the testing center either. You shouldn't do that during your exam. I realize some people do that. And since you're in a room by yourself, you think you would be able to, but no, you cannot. It's in the rules. Can't talk. And second was keeping my hand on my chin over my mouth. That's an odd question. And you can't even do that. You can't even just put your hand here and not say something. They will tell you, nope, you can't put your hand there. They have to see your mouth. So you can't take the exam like this. So that's an interesting question. Let's take this question. Is this nope, can't do that. Or just sit here. Can't do that either. So no, they have to be able to see your mouth, and you can't say anything during the exam. So that's how that works. Now, most cases where people have run into those types of situations, it's a warning, and they go, oh, okay, yeah, I won't talk anymore, thanks. And then you finish the exam and you're fine. In very unusual situations, people may do it again and they revoke the exam, or people will open up a support ticket and say, wait, you told me to put the watch over here. Why would you revoke the exam? And they go through the process of getting you another voucher and making that happen. So keep familiar with that. Keep understanding where those problems might be so you can avoid them. And perhaps more importantly, if you know to expect it, then it's something that you can prepare for and you're not surprised by it during the exam. So that's why. It's very difficult to make an online testing scenario as secure as the testing that might be in a testing center. So that's what they're trying to do. They are very strict on the online because of that. That's why I tell people, if you can, just go to a testing center. So much easier, so much more easier to go through. You don't have to worry about it. It's not a stressful situation that you might run into. You don't have to worry about what's on your desk. You don't have to worry about unplugging monitors. You don't have to worry about wearing a watch, because they'll tell you when you go in, okay, take off your watch, hand me your phone, we'll put it in the locker. Here is your piece of paper, something to write with, go in the room, go take your exam. That's it. So I think that's how people focus on this. I think it's probably your best bet, but I realize not everybody has access to a testing center nearby, and not everybody has the ability to go to a testing center. I'm in Florida, so everything's open. We're just walking around like life is normal, because it is. But there's other places in the country where they're still very particular about what you're wearing on your face and what you're able to touch and where people are, and that's up to them. But it just makes the experience a little bit different depending on where you are. Find the one that works best for you. Doesn't matter what they're doing or how they're doing it, just find the one that works best for you. Other questions. Let's keep going. most importantly, we talked about this in the study group 2 days ago. Like I do, pick a testing center next to the barbecue restaurant. I think that's incredibly important. Every exam, I think, should automatically come with a rack of ribs, but that's just me. That's just how it works. Other questions. This is my problem with online testing. Jermaine says, my place is too messy for online testing. I get you. I'm there. I have 3 dogs. If they were in the same room that I'm in, it would be chaos during an exam. So I would have to set up a very particular setup. If you were to look at my studio, this would never work for an online exam. Way too many monitors. You can only have 1 monitor. All the others have to be physically disconnected. Obviously, that's hard to do in here. So I couldn't even take my exam in here, even though that's where my camera is. That's where the lights are. It's where I work here. This is where I am 24/7. I sleep on this desk. Many people don't know that. But that's where I usually do all of my work. And I think if you're someone who is, you got an environment where you got roommates, there's other people coming in. It's not an environment that you can easily control. Just go to a testing center. Make it so much easier for you. Here is a question, a very pointed question, a very leading question. So here's the question. It says, given the invasiveness of the View client and what privileged/confidential information is on your machine, what are your thoughts on using a VM for the exam? You know, from a security person's perspective, you're thinking the right way. This is how everyone should think when it comes to using applications on their systems. And I'm speaking as someone who worked in cybersecurity for so long that this is just one of the many things you have to worry about. I was talking about this with my daughter. She has a degree in IT. We were talking about, and she's also likes gaming. And so for the games that she was working, she does a lot in Final Fantasy. And this past week with Final Fantasy, there was an add-on programmer who created add-ons for Final Fantasy that if the add-on was not, I don't know if it was a licensing thing or if it was not installed properly or something, he had it so that if it wasn't working the way they wanted it to work, that it would power down your system. It would turn off your operating system, or at least they threatened that they would make the add-on control your system in some way. Well, as you can imagine, people didn't take very kindly to that perspective of a developer coming straight out and telling you, we're going to make your system unusable if you don't follow our instructions on how to use it. And that was a pretty telling thing. Most people got very angry about this. And when we were talking about this over dinner, and I said, well, that's every application you install, by the way. How do you trust Microsoft to do an application that isn't going to steal your information or turn your system off at a whim? How do you know that Apple won't do that? How do you know that any third-party application you install on your system doesn't have that functionality built into that? And I think if you are someone who has not really been in security, or you haven't thought about security in that way, that's kind of a surprise to folks, because they perhaps never even thought, what, Microsoft would not do that? Microsoft could do that to me? Yes, anything you install on your system could potentially be dangerous. Anything you install on your system could potentially be dangerous. That's why we often say the core foundation of security in these operating systems, of IT security in general, is trust. Trust is a constant watchword for everything that we do in this industry. So when you install new software onto your system, you are trusting that the manufacturer of that software has written it in a way that would not steal your personal information, disrupt your system, or cause other problems. Or you could install software that has built into it ransomware, and the ransomware would suddenly take over your system and begin encrypting all of your files. Same process. You're installing a new piece of software. Some software is good. Some software is clearly not good. And you have to make that decision every time you install software on whether you trust that software to do what it says it's going to do. And so we talk about that all the time, about installing applications that have been digitally signed, installing applications where you know where the application was downloaded from. Is the application you downloaded match the application that's stored on that website? Maybe we'll hash both of them and see if they match each other. There's all of these things that we can do. Maybe we run the software in a sandbox. Maybe we run it in a VM. Like the question that was on this one is, what are your thoughts on using a VM for the exam? I'm not even sure if they allow you to use a VM for the exam now that I'm thinking about it, because obviously applications can recognize that they are running in a VM and they might not allow that. And that certainly might speak to someone trying to use a virtual machine to steal portions of the exam. So they might not allow something like that. That's really more of a question for CompTIA to be able to do that. I don't know if anybody has asked them before. I'd love to know. I'll ask them myself. I'll send a note when we're done here. Lori, send me a note asking me to send a note about that. So that's what we'll do, is figure out what that is. And folks in the chat room have been saying, software is digitally signed. Who signs the software? The manufacturer of the software. That way, when you install it, you know that no one could have changed the software from the time it was digitally signed by the manufacturer till the time it gets to you. Now, obviously, if the manufacturer themselves are the ones adding the malware to the application, that doesn't help you very much, which we've already seen over the past year or 2 years, where there have been cases where the attackers got inside of the application developers network. They added their own code into the application, and then they just let it go. And the malware itself was distributed by the developer of the app without the developer even knowing the malware was in there. That does happen. And so the trust for that application developer dropped completely when that happened. You have to trust the software that you're installing. That trust is incredibly important. So that's why I mentioned that. That's why that's such an important aspect of this. Another question that came through, is there a time limit I can take the 1102 exam after taking the 1101 exam? There's no ticking clock, other than both these exams must be completed before the entire exam series is retired. And you'll notice at the beginning of every study group, I give you the estimated retirement dates. Generally, the retirement for an exam series occurs 3.5 years after its release date. So, for example, the 1101 and 1102 exams were released. I'll just bring the slide back up and we can talk to it. Those two exams were released last year there's the slide, in April. Here we go. Here is the details on this. So the 1101 and 1102 were released on April the 20th of 2022. You fast forward 3.5 years, that puts an estimated retirement date somewhere around November of 2025. So there is a time frame. So let's say you take the 1101 or 1102 exam, take one of those exams, you take it the day it comes out. You take it on April the 20th of 2022 and you pass. Great. One down, one to go. Now, how long do you have to take that second exam? You have until somewhere around November of 2025 to pass that second exam to then be certified. So yes, you could wait 3.5 years between exam versions and you would still earn your A+ exam. Now, during that time frame, you're obviously not A+ certified. That's probably a negative, but there is no specific time frame. Some people say, oh, you only have a year to do this. Well, it's not necessarily true either. You have until the entire set, the entire series is retired. So that's it. That's how we work with that. Other questions. Let's keep going. Let's keep going on here. Another one. Professor, do you plan to make an app with your YouTube lessons? I'm not. There's YouTube. There's a YouTube app, and I have a playlist on YouTube, so I think I'd kind of be redundant. That'd be the Department of Redundancy, redundant kind of thing. So could I make an app with YouTube lessons? Yes. Do you need another app on your mobile device? I looked at my mobile device and it's just page after page after page of apps that I don't use anymore. And now it's filled up and I have to delete app icons. I have to delete apps to be able to see the new apps. Okay. I know, I'm sorry, I have a problem. I recognize I have a problem. But I've got to work through that. The last thing we need is yet another app from me that effectively duplicates what's available in the YouTube app. So no, we're not gonna do that. So that's the idea anyway. Not gonna make that happen. We're still having arguments in the chat room about that great background I have. That's my room. This is my office. It's my studio. So that's real. It's not a green screen. I don't have anything to throw at it today. Do we have? There we go. There we go. Did it? Yeah, hit around the top there. So there we go. That's a real thing. That's not the green screen. I was turning the lights on and off earlier, just so folks could appreciate that it was indeed not a green screen. So let's do the lights again, just because you asked. So why don't I answer? And then I'm going to answer your question about another question that came in. Speaking of creating things, so I'm going to turn off one of the lights so you can get an idea what that's like. There we go. That's one side. Let's turn off the other side. Don't be spooky. Turn off the left side. Here we go. That's what it's normally like in here. Actually not. Normally there's no lights on at all. So we can turn the front lights off. There we go. That's what it's normally like. But normally, most people don't realize it, because if you look at the view of this, it seems like it's awfully dark in here. And you're right, it is. Because normally, when I'm doing a live stream, all of the windows have blinds. I have a big set of sliding doors. Those have blinds over them, because when I'm recording video, all of my cameras and lighting is set up for a very specific setup. And in the middle of the day, there's more light in here, and at night there's less light. And the last thing I want is for the lighting in my videos to change depending on what the time of day is. That wouldn't make any sense at all. So I tell people that, yeah, it's very, very dark if you look at this. But of course, the lights are shining on me. Back behind me, that's really dark because you have nothing to see back there. Why would I put lights back there? I could, but why would I do that? The lights are pointing at me into the background. So it's a real background. It's my real fireplace. When it gets cold, and it does get cold here in Florida, I turn the fireplace on, and it works great. So that's why. That's what that's about. It is legitimate. And now it's messy. Now I have to clean it based on that. The message that came through here from Jermaine says, I think a sleeping cat in the background would be a nice addition. Yes, until the dogs came in, and then it would just be chaos. So that's probably why we don't do that. There's no cats around. Plus, I'm slightly allergic to all that for cat hair. For some reason, not dog hair. I don't know why. That's the way it is. Here's a popular question, a frequently asked question, an FAQ. Are you working on Network Plus tests? I see A Plus in security, plus on your website, but not Network Plus. I would love to have Network Plus practice exams available. My goal is to have them available in the coming months. I don't have a release date or anything like that. But there is some work that is going on that's getting towards that. It takes a long time to write a book. But my goal is to have something like that available. It would be good. To have that there. So I think that would be great, is to have some practice exam books for Network Plus. I'm not necessarily committing to that, but I also would like to have these. So I am concurring. I am agreeing with you that it would be good to have those. I just don't know how to make those happen faster other than just to write them. So that's my goal, is to get one out. Could it happen sooner? Probably not. Is there a case where it may not happen at all? Yeah, that's possible. It doesn't exist until it exists, right? Like anything else, the book doesn't even, in your world, the book is not even real until suddenly it's on my website. And in fact, that's how this is going to go. And I just can't control how long that's going to take. So in the coming months, I think it's probably a pretty good estimate, assuming that it's going to happen at all. We'll see. Yeah, some people, I was mentioning the fireplace, and some people said, oh, it got cold, huh? What, down to 60? 60, that's freezing. Can you imagine living in 60-degree weather? Oh, those poor people have to do that. Thankfully, I have my heater when it gets down to 60. I can bring out my sweaters and a lot of big, heavy hats. and we can go out and shovel the snow. Us in Florida, we just don't mess around. We openly mock the snow, realizing, of course, that our day is coming when the hurricane hits. But when it's winter, that's all we got. So we're going with it. Other questions. Let's keep this party going. Other things. Oh, it just scrolls so fast as we're going on. Now I have lived in different parts of Florida. So some parts of Florida do get quite cold. And this, we're going to go, Toffer's not buying it. That's a green screen. Could you change it so it looks like you're soaring above the Himalayas? I could, but I'd have to put a green screen in. I don't have a green screen, so I can't do this. So here's what we're going to do. Let's see if I can, since we have some time today, I'm going to disconnect my microphone. I'm going to show you that I can actually get up. And there we go. Do I have, there we go. That's nice. That's not, oh, that's nice. There we go. So now we got a nice fire going. That's so nice. It's going to be really hot in here very shortly. What is the temperature outside right now? This is something I should not be doing. I need my nightstand app, and it shows me on my nightstand app that it's 77 degrees outside right now. So it's kind of warm. I could just open the door up. Certainly should probably turn off the fireplace here real quick. So hopefully that's made you realize, no, that's not a green screen. That's a real fireplace. Or here you go, conspiracy theorists. Or did he simply turn on the video that played it with fire on the green screen? See, you never know. You never know what you're going to be able to do with this. It's always a mystery. So hopefully it gives you some perspective. And when it does get cold out, that's fantastic to have that right in here. And it's so useful to keep everything warm. Usually you don't, in the northern part of Florida where I am, it does sometimes get pretty cold. So that comes in handy. So yes, other people are saying, yep, you just stuck a new layer in there and now you're showing the video, and see, there's no win. There's no win here. What I should do is just put in more cameras. I could probably put in more cameras on the side or cameras from the back. We'll have to work on that. That'd be kind of fun because I've got, those of you who can see this, I've got 2 slots available where there's just no camera. Camera 7 and camera 8. And quite honestly, the streamer camera that I have on camera 6 doesn't help either. Where's camera 6? This is going to be sort of a picture in a picture in a picture kind of thing. So there's camera 6. I don't need that as an input. In fact, it doesn't work as input, but I've got it on there just so I can see it easily. And you're right. I could put a cat cam, except I don't have a cat. So this is not going to work. So, and I think the internet's or the chat room's kind of taking it to the next level. Is that maybe all of this is CGI? Maybe none of this is real. That it's not a green screen because none of it is real. None of it is here in reality. So let's put me back over here with just me on the screen. We'll figure out the details. So that's why. And some of you are even saying, well, yeah, that's not a picture. We didn't need to do that. It's all just a deep fake. None of this happens to be real. We'll go with that. I don't think anybody has ever seen me in real life. So maybe that's why. I talk about a family, but is there really a family? This all could just be a virtual world in my mind. And now we're living in the Matrix. That was a very quick trip we just made, by the way, to get there. Let's kind of focus on other things. Is that an LPX Mobo on the shelf? Well, up there on the shelf, what do I have there? I want to say that is an LX motherboard. An Intel LX. This goes back quite a number of YouTubes. Or is that I don't think that's my Xbox motherboard. I think that's the LX motherboard. So yes, that's one of those Intel LX motherboards that happens to be. That was Justin asking that one. I've got like Blackberries up there. There's some old, I think I've got a, what were the compact, iPac? Is that what they were back in the day? I can't even remember, but those are up there too. I've got them hidden up there. I can pull out and have a look every once in a while. Other question. There was another one that came in. Oh, this one was, I thought, a good one from Matt that said, do you have a UPS and a generator for your studio? I have both. Currently have both. I have a full home generator. We live in Florida. There are hurricanes that come through, and the hurricane, when it takes out your power, if it came right over here, it'll take out your power for a week, a 2-week period, or sometimes even more, depending how bad the storm is. And so no one wants to live in Florida. And to give you a perspective of those of you that live in Florida, the hurricane season is usually in the warmer times of the year. So it's in the sort of summerish early fall time frame, but that's when the water is warmer and that's when the hurricanes are stronger. And once the hurricane comes through and takes out everyone's power, what you're left with is the hottest, most humid weather that you've ever had to sit through. Now imagine having no air conditioning for a week in that kind of weather. And now you're sort of on that line of figuring out why it might be useful to have a generator. So yes, we do have a generator here. Interestingly enough, I have a UPS in my desk. So this desk that you see here actually has 19-inch racks on both sides. Can't really see it very well. There's a 19-inch rack on this side. There's a 19-inch rack on this side. And they're in a closed area, because if you open these up, I wonder if you can hear it. You really can't. That one's not very loud. This other side is kind of loud. So these are very quiet. I'll open this one up. Not very easy to hear that noise coming through because of the microphones that I use and the audio setup that I have, and that's by design. The pieces that are here, though, are designed to have these racks on the side, and I've got a UPS down here on the left rack. There is a UPS on the bottom that covers all of the components that you can see on the top of the desk and the ones that are in the racks themselves. So they're UPS for the desk. I have another UPS in the other room that is for internet and kind of an external connection to the rest of the house. And so that makes it very nice when there's a power glitch or something weird going on, that I have everything continues to run. And then after, I think it's 10 or 15 seconds of a complete power outage, the generator says, all right, apparently the power's not coming back on. Let's ramp up. So it takes a number of seconds to start the generator and finally get the power going enough to flip a full house switch that switches everything from the outside power to my generator power. And then once the power comes back on, it waits about 5 minutes, thinks, okay, if it's been on for 5 minutes, it's probably back up and running. We'll shut up. We'll switch back over to regular power and we'll turn off the generator. So that's very useful. The UPS does help with surges, it helps with brownouts, it helps with temporary power loss. So if it's something very quick, the power went out for 2 seconds and then it came back, UPS has already taken care of that and the generator doesn't have to kick in. That's pretty much the same as where this comes from. The generator I have is a natural gas generator. It is one that does connect directly to natural gas. So there is an expectation, because all the natural gas is underground, that if there is a hurricane, that natural gas will continue to be available, because that's provided to me by the utilities of my city. So hopefully that's the case. And so far it has been. We've had to use the generator a number of times, and it's something that's had been nice to have and have it there. What UPS make and model? Oh, well, I will say overall, almost exclusively with everything I buy are APC. I really think APC are the best quality UPSs. And the UPSs that I have, I don't know the exact make and model, but I think it's somewhere around a 1500. And it is a full sine wave, always on. They call it an online UPS because it's always providing me power from the battery side. That way, if there is a glitch, if the power goes out for 2 seconds, I'm not switching over to battery. I'm already on battery. So there's no possibility that any equipment that I have would have a problem with a quick outage like that because they never see it. They never see any problems with power. So that's why. And now controversy has hit the chat room. And we have this question from Toffer that says, Professor, you say that there's really no such thing as a layer 3 switch. Could you explain why it's technically incorrect to call it that? I can. And it's true. There is really no such thing as a layer 3 switch because switching is a layer 2 function. Routing is a layer 3 function. But calling something or referring to something as a layer 3 switch doesn't somehow change the switching process. It still switches at layer 2. It still routes at layer 3. You could just as easily call it a layer 2 router. Why don't we call it a layer 2 router? That's what it is. But it's not routing at layer 2. It's routing at layer 3. It's switching at layer 2. So that's why I say that it is a bit of a misnomer. And I go a step further and say there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch because switching doesn't operate at layer 3. That's fundamentally my argument. Now, obviously, for those of you, I look forward to your cards and letters. Obviously, there are devices that you can purchase that clearly call themselves layer 3 switches. Yes, there is. And what that really is you could purchase a standalone router and a standalone switch. You have to pay for 2 devices. You'd have to connect both devices to power. You would have to manage the operating systems and firmware inside of both of those devices independently. And you have to back up both of those devices independently. And if you have to replace one of those devices, you have to replace and purchase another device to replace that. The idea of a layer 3 switch is, well, you have software inside of this device that is routing. You have software inside of this device is switching. Instead of having 2 separate physical devices, let's put them both into the same device. But it doesn't change how networking works. All it's doing is taking the software, the routing software and the switching software and putting it in the same chassis. That's the only thing that's really happening. You're still switching at layer 2. You're still routing at layer 3. But what they mean when they say it's a layer 3 switch is they're saying you can turn on the routing functionality and have certain connections routing and have other connections switching. So it's really, your benefit is you have one device to purchase, one device to plug into power, one piece of firmware to set up, one configuration file you have to manage and back up, and one device that you have to replace or have on standby if you need to have something replace that if it fails, for example. It makes it so much easy. And so that is the reason that switching always uses MAC addresses and operates at layer 2. Routing always uses IP addresses and operates at layer 3. So it was really a bunch of marketing people that got together that said, how can we sell this? I know, we'll call it a layer 3 switch. And they'll get both a switch and a router in the same device. But unfortunately, as we're learning these technologies from the ground up, calling something a layer 3 switch is right out of the gate very confusing. Wait, I thought the OSI layer 2 is switching. OSI layer 3 is routing. So are we changing the way we switch? See where the problem comes from? That's where the problem is. And so I tell people that's why there's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. At least you shouldn't think of it this way. When you're learning the technology, learn about layer 3 routing, learn about layer 2 switching. And then once you understand those technologies and understand how you combine those two together into the same chassis, now you can call it layer 3 switching and understand that it's not really switching at layer 3 and where the name came from. But I think calling it right out of the gate a layer 3 switch is just confusing to people, because I've had people tell me, oh, no, I have a layer 3 switch, which means I'm switching, but it's using IP addresses to figure out where the destination is. No, that's not what's happening at all. That's not at all what's going on inside of that device. That's why. And that's why I say it in that way. That's why I say that that cables don't have a speed. There's no such thing as a layer 3 switch. What's the third one? There's another one there too. Because people often say, well, how fast is a Cat 5 cable? It's not fast at all. It's just a cable. It has no speed. It just sits there. It doesn't have speed. It's just a cable. It's just a bunch of copper. And that's why we have to now specify, is there a certain standard of Ethernet signal that you are putting on that cable? And if so, what does the standard specify as to the appropriate cable that would allow the type of signal to traverse 100 meters? That's the question that they're really asking. So you have to understand the context of that and how it's used. So who uses layer 3 switches? Would it be large enterprises? Would it be SMB? Would it be as something at home? Could be all of these. It tends to be that you can use layer 3 switches in a lot of places. Now, obviously, the routing function inside of a layer 3 switch is not going to be as advanced as a standalone router. Standalone routers might provide dynamic routing, might support OSPF or BGP. You're probably not going to support BGP in a layer 3 router because it's really designed to go into a small closet or to connect maybe one building to another building, but not have to install a whole new router to be able to do something like that. And have that there. I love these. You're going to have to give me some context. You have to tell me which one you're talking about. I don't like anything that says some people say, and then they tell me what some people say, because I don't believe that for a moment. I don't think anybody says that. I think that's an excuse for somebody to make an argument of something that nobody ever said. And I think this is probably an example of this. Some websites say OSI model is dead. No, they don't. No one has ever said that, because that's what we use to communicate these basic ideas around data and packets and frames on a network is the OSI model. It's what the entire industry uses. So if you can find me a website that says the OSI model is dead, we can address that. I don't think anybody's ever said that. It just doesn't. TCP IP model, though, never got off the ground. Nobody uses the TCP IP model except Cisco. They put it in their Cisco training materials, and then you never use it outside a classroom. But everybody uses the OSI model. It has been used for all of my career and will continue to be used going forward because it really best describes what's going on the network in a very distinct way, in a very modular way, in a very specific way. And you can really separate out all of those different functions. And we've just all decided that's what we use. So when you're talking to somebody on the phone, you've never talked to them before, you're talking to support, and you say, I've done this work. It looked at first like it was a layer 3 problem, but I went through the IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and all the routes, and they all look good. I captured some data. Now I think the problem may be something at layer 7. And they know instantly what you're talking about. They know immediately the language and the scope of the particular problem that you're trying to tell them. And that's why the OSI model is so valuable. We use it all the time. I use it constantly throughout the day, especially when talking to other people. Can you imagine telling somebody about a next generation firewall and not having a way to describe what's happening at layer 2, layer 3, layer 1, or layer 7, layer 4? There's no way to do that unless everybody in the room is talking the OSI model. And that's why. It really works great. I want to thank Lolly in the chat room with the $5 super chat. Hi, Professor. Just want to say thank you. Just passed my 1102 exam literally 1 hour ago. So you missed the first hour, but I think there was a good reason for that. Lolly says, I'm now A+ certified. I appreciate all your content, and I appreciate the $5 super chat. And more importantly, I appreciate you letting me know. I love getting those stories of people passing their exams. Great to hear it happen. More than happy that we were able to help you a little bit down that path of getting that certification. So congratulations on your brand new A+ certification. And thanks also for the super chat. That's great news. Always love hearing that. Let's see what other questions have come in. How are we doing on time? We are over time at this point, but I think we can fit in a couple more. I'm not sure about this one. Are we referring to, I think, referring to salary here. But the question from Carlos asks, why are IT payments, and I think it meant salary, in Florida so bad? I have friends earning more than me in Boston, and we have the same certificates and the same years of experience. My friends and I have A+ and Network Plus. And I think other people in the chat room sort of mentioned this is, have you ever lived in Boston? Have you ever seen what the cost of everything is up there? For just living. And secondly, there's winter. You're going to have to pay me to live in that. And so, yes, it's probably, it probably does. You probably do earn more Plus, in Massachusetts, don't they have a healthy state tax? So Florida, 0 state tax. Ding. So you effectively earn 10% more in Florida for exactly the same salary versus perhaps living in another state. And secondly, things do cost a little bit less here. So the cost of living is a little bit better in Florida, a little bit easier to get into a house versus being in the northeast part of the country. So there are some advantages there. That's why people often say, how much can I expect to make in my entry-level job? I say it's hard to tell because the jobs in Boston versus Minneapolis versus Orlando are very different, not just in location, but in all of the other financials surrounding that. And that's just sort of common in what you will find. Now, one of the things that's different, though, and I think this is, we sometimes dwell too much on salary, not because it's not worth thinking about, because it absolutely is thinking about this. Those of you that have watched my study groups before know that I am very focused on salary. That's a big part of this. I love the upward mobility that IT gives you. And I think that's what we sort of don't think about when we talk about maybe entry-level positions into IT. I would tell you with all certainty that don't worry so much about the first job you get and how much they're paying you. Usually these are entry-level positions or help desk positions. You're going to be in this job 6 months, 9 months, maybe a year, at which point you're going to level up and go to the next position, either within the same company or to a different organization. And when you do that, there's an increase in pay. In fact, most people really recommend going to a new company because that's where you get the highest increases in pay, is when you move from one company to another, because a company that already hires you knows that it's much easier for you to stay than for you to go somewhere else. And so they adjust your salary accordingly based on how hard it will be for you to go somewhere else. But once you realize, we just go to another company, it's not that difficult. And then all that falls away and you end up making more money every time, a lot more money, more than if you had stayed by going to some other company, other organization. So you do find that too. But in IT, you can very quickly move up the rankings. You can very quickly make a good bit of cash just by moving up and leveling up in your skill set. And the faster you do that with your skill set, the faster that amount of money goes up. I've lived in Florida all my life. I think I did pretty good at making money for this. Now, most of the time, I will say I've worked for companies that were based in Florida and earned a certain amount of money. But I would say the bulk of my career, I was working for companies that were based in Silicon Valley. I was working for the manufacturer. And I think that helps someone a little bit with leverage of your salary when it's an organization based in California that's used to California numbers. And you tell them, I'd like to make this much. And they go, oh, okay, sure. That's less than we would pay someone in California, but they don't realize that's more than you would commonly pay someone in Florida. So sometimes you can work that angle of the companies in one place, they expect a certain value, but don't sell yourself short either. If you've worked through the years very hard to learn these topics, and you have a certain set of skills that provides value to a potential employer, ask for what you're worth. Doesn't matter where you live. And if they're not willing to pay you what you're worth, you go to the next one. Somebody's going to pay you the right amount. So it's also not something where you can just say, Florida makes a lot less than Boston. I've made a lot more in Florida than some people I know in Boston. So it just depends in that scenario, which one it happens to be. Let's keep going. So there are quite a bit. So specifically, this was sort of a generalized question, but I'm going to kind of approach this because I think it's an important thing to consider. When I mentioned earlier that at certain points every 3.5 years, CompTIA will retire an exam and everyone will then use or take the updated set of exams going forward. So every 3.5 years, they retire a set of exams. Usually there's about a 6-month overlap just before the retirement so that people can start ramping up with the new content while other people are trying to finish up the old content. So they don't cut you off. They give you a little bit of a overlap time so that you can make a well established and hopefully a timely transition to either finish up your studies or transition into the new set of exams. There are usually significant differences between exam versions. So between the 1002 and 1102, about 30 to 40% of the content is brand new. In the case of 1002 and 1102, it's about 30% is new content, and some content was dropped off of it. So you have these dramatic changes between exam versions, which is why I tell people all the time, if you're planning to take the 1102 exam, do not study from 1002 materials. You're setting yourself up for failure because you'll walk into the exam and you'll get all these questions about Windows 11 and these things in control panel that you weren't expecting because they weren't on the 1002 exam. They are on the 1102 exam objectives. So if you have any materials that say they're for the 220 1002, throw them out. Get new ones that are for the 1102. It's so important. Make sure you have the right ones there. That's going to be a big problem if you walk into the exam and you've studied the wrong content. That's not a good situation. You might pass. Maybe you luck up. But can you imagine not knowing 30% of the exam? Are you really going to do as well as you could? Probably not. So that's why. So make sure. So here's an interesting one. I think this probably is very timely. Hey, Professor, what's your thought on Testout PC practice exams as preparation for the A+ certification? You know, Testout has not just their own labs and videos and practice exams and books like a lot of people. I've never used them, so I don't have any context. I know people who have used them that like the labs, but I've never seen any of their practice exams. I've never seen any of the other things they produce, so I just don't have a good answer to that. What's interesting, what's timely about that, however, let me see if I can find it here real quick. This is, let me turn this down. So what's timely about this is on the CompTIA website, the press release that says, you've probably seen this. If you haven't, this is timely. CompTIA and Testout join forces, accelerating the shared goal of empowering millions of students with technical training and digital literacy education. Synergies provide unique opportunity to expand and diversify the tech workforce. It's all press releases, right? Well, what this really says is CompTIA, and this was on January the 19th, last month, has announced the strategic acquisition of Testout. So when you say Testout, you really now mean CompTIA. So Testout is now a fully owned subsidiary. I don't know if it's going to be integrated. I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know what the plans are. But currently, they're still acting as two separate entities, but I'm sure there will be a plan to integrate some of these things together. But if you see anything that says Testout, it will probably have a similar scope of being able to have the CompTIA name stuck on it, because now everything that has the Testout name is owned 100% by the folks at CompTIA. A lot of people love the Testout labs, so it'll be interesting to see how those are integrated in. And now that means that CompTIA technically has training for some Microsoft certifications. Technically, CompTIA has training for some Cisco certifications. That's interesting. There's some interesting things that might happen there. Will CompTIA continue to offer those? Will they decide not to offer them? We don't know. They haven't told me. They're not going to tell me. But we'll keep an eye open. We'll start seeing what's going on and figure out what's there. So you got to wonder. If the link of that article, all I did was I just Googled CompTIA Testout acquisition. Took me right to the CompTIA website and the information they have there. I'll stick the URL in the chat because I can do that, but you can't. There it is. There's the URL in the chat for that article. Have that there. You're glad to put that in there. Yes, our subscriber list, thank you for even mentioning this Let's Play. Our subscriber list on YouTube is ridiculous. You guys are amazing. You are fantastic. I love every single one of you. I'm going to stop by tonight with some hot chocolate. and my personal thanks. Just the number of subscribers on YouTube, the amount of views we're getting on YouTube is just phenomenal. I can't thank you enough. I mentioned earlier, this is sort of the idea of the whatever experiment this was that we tried to set up has suddenly escaped the lab, and it's now sort of out in the world, and it's doing this crazy thing. And we're just watching in awe while all of this happens, but we're not the ones doing it. You're the ones doing it. So my ongoing thanks and appreciation could not be even put into the right context here. We are so happy with the way these videos have been received, and the training that we do, and the live streams that we produce, and the other products that we have. We literally can't do it without you. And you've shown and are watching and enjoying these videos. We're getting great feedback from you. We're putting that back into the latest videos. It's all just one big circle as these things come around. So we really do appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, you're missing out. So you're not part of the party. Make sure you subscribe. We want to get that up there. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube and click the subscribe button. If you click the bell, that's great. You don't have to click the bell. Subscriber numbers are fine too. Do whatever is best for you, and make sure that that's something you like to do. But it helps us a lot. I have now my own representative at YouTube I can go to for questions. They let me know about things that are going on behind the scenes. There's new products coming out on the YouTube side around education that I get to have input on. I get to talk directly to the product managers at YouTube about things that you have told me would be helpful to you on YouTube. So what you're telling me gets sent right over to those product managers at YouTube. You effectively have that voice now because you have decided to subscribe and be part of this craziness that's going on. So thank you so much for that. Could not thank you enough. I'm literally the luckiest person in the world for that. So thank you for everything that you do along those lines. Other questions. Once you get the certification / pass the exams, do you have to renew them once the current period expires? So there is an important consideration there. Once you pass your exam, a clock starts, and that clock is a 3-year timer. So you are certified with your A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, and other CompTIA exams, many of the other CompTIA exams. You are certified for 3 years from the date you pass the exam. So that's different than the retirement date of an exam series. So when we say an exam series is retiring, that's different than the certification that you have earned. For example, I mentioned earlier that you could take your last A+ exam on the last day it's offered in November of 2025. And if you take it on that day, you're A+ certified. But the next day, the exam series is retired. Doesn't matter. You already got your A+ certification on that last day. You are certified for 3 years. That's the way it works. Once you're certified, it really doesn't matter what they do with the exams. Once you are certified, you have 3 years, and you can just keep renewing it every 3 years. You never have to take the exams again. You just renew it every 3 years. That's usually how most people will do it. There's a lot of options for renewing your certification, so much so that I created a video that gives you an overview on all of these different renewal methods. And it's in the YouTube video description of this video, which is how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. I think that's the name of it, something like that. And it's a video that takes you through all of the different scenarios and ends up talking about the CertMaster CE as a method of renewing your certification where you don't have to take another exam. You don't have to collect CEUs. You just take their online CBT in literally just a few hours, and you're renewed. So that's why I made that video, so you would know the different ways of making that happen. Other questions. Let's see. And here's one that's timely. Apparently there's a big game that's scheduled for, is it Sunday? I don't know. You're not going to like my answer to this one, which asks, Professor, who are you rooting for next Sunday? And then it gives some options on apparently teams that exist that I would be rooting for. I have no idea. I'm not really rooting for either. I'm not going to watch any games next Sunday, so I don't know. You got me. I'm the worst to talk sports with. Here's my perspective of the big game. I think execution is going to be key. Turnovers are certainly going to be an important part, especially in the second half. And ball control is critical. As long as they stay healthy, I think they got a chance of winning it. That's the mic drop right there. That's all I got. I just saved you so much time watching the pre-show. That was done. But that's how I talk to other people who talk about the game. And even if the game is over, I of course don't see it. I don't watch the games. I'm doing something else. And if it's done, like the next day, hey, what about that game? I said, oh man, what about that game? Like I said, the turnovers, it was critical. It had such a story there. And then of course, special teams. If special teams aren't going to do anything, you're not going to win the game. I think we saw that pretty clearly. That's what I do. I just do. They've already got, so they already beat me to it. The special teams need to keep it together, or else there may be trouble. Absolutely, I could not agree more. You just keep doing the same thing over and over again. I've watched enough football, and I used to be just avid. I used to watch a lot of football, especially college football. I loved college football. I still love college football. I just don't have time. I don't know if you noticed earlier, somebody was asking me, hey, when's this going to be done? When are you going to finish that? Okay, can't watch a game. I got things I need to do. So that's probably why you slowly wean yourself off of a task of watching a game or doing something, and then you don't keep up, and then you're not emotionally invested anymore. And then, okay, I could probably take it or leave it. And most of the time I just leave it. Because it turns out they're going to do another one next year. They are. So that's why. Who's going to win that one? Why don't we talk about next year and who's going to win the next year's Super Bowl? I don't know. Favorite CFB team. I used to have one. Now, I, of course, have family in Canada. I have to be very careful because they do have teams. I have family on the West Coast in Vancouver. I have family on the East Coast in Hamilton, and we've got folks in Edmonton. There's all over the place. So I have to be very careful about who I'm choosing because they do make it very clear that they have sides, and I need to pick the right one. Now, I'm married into the Canadian family, so it's even worse because they could marry me right out of the Canadian family if they wanted to. So that's why. That's okay. I'll support whoever they want me to support at any point, and I'll be glad to support them. I'm easy. That's simple. So whoever I'd like to support that week, I'm in. I'm there. You know, if I had to sit down and watch anything right now, I love watching cricket. I know that's sort of a weird offshoot, especially for somebody in the United States, but there's just something about that game that's fascinating to me. That's the thing. Oh, you mean college football, CFB, the college football program. Well, I'm in Florida, so just pick any Florida team. I guess that's the one I have to support there. Does it snow in Florida? These folks have never been to Florida. Rarely snows in Florida. Do I have a video of snow in Florida? I'm sure I do, because it has snowed. Has not been recent, but if I go to my phone and let's just try it. Let's try this amazing search that is built into my phone. And does it find the snow that we have in Florida? Ironically, it has found, I can't make this one up. It found a video of me working with, I don't know what I was doing here, but it found me working with a video that had SQL injection. I don't know if you see that. I'm doing something there. And the SQL injection is a video I was working with that has a mountain with snow on it. And the iPhone has decided, oh, well, then that's what you did. You had snow. Nope, don't have a video. We'll have to put one up. I'll put one in the Network Plus study group. We'll have some video here. And if it snows in Florida, the palm trees die. If it's snowing in Florida, there aren't any palm trees where it's snowing. It does not snow where there are palm trees. Northern part of Florida generally gets snow, although there have been times, flurries, where South Florida's gotten some snow, but it's enough where it comes down. Oh, look, there's snow. And then it hit the ground, and now it's not here anymore. That's pretty much the snow of Florida. There have been times in northern part of Florida where it has snowed. It's got down below zero. There's ice on the roads, and we can't go anywhere because we're just not prepared for that kind of thing. So that's where I mentioned that. Earlier, I mentioned that there was 30% new content on the 220-1102 exam. And it differs depending on the exam versions. It might be 50% on a different exam, like Security Plus, for example, was over 50% this last update. Does your video library highlight new/different content? No, and it doesn't. For a very specific reason is that it's very, very difficult to do that because they aren't just changing one or two things. They're not just adding entire sections or deleting entire sections. They're changing and adding new bullets within a very large group of bullets. Let me give you an example. So let's have a look at, I'm going to pull up my list of what has changed with the 1102 exam, just to give you a scope of what this might be. So we'll go to our 1102 objectives. I'll bring over this. I make a spreadsheet of all of these. So here's my spreadsheet for the 220-1102 exam objectives version 3 that was released 2021-1209. So I have every single exam objective on the right side. You can see section 1.1, identify basic features of Microsoft Windows editions, Home, Pro for Workstations, Enterprise, feature differences. Those are the ones we just looked at earlier. So I effectively copy and paste these in, and then I go back and decide on the 1002 which ones of these exam objectives are new and which ones are old. If it's an old one or it was in the previous version, I put it's in green, and I put the exam objective it was in the previous version. If it's new, it has the yellow. So you can see in a single video, like these are chunks of videos that I do, and in a single video, half of them might be old, half of them might be new. So you can't really point to any single part of the video, or you can't just make a video with what's changed, because some things were deleted, which this does not show in this spreadsheet. So the deleted stuff you can't watch. I can't tell you watch the old videos and then just watch this one and combine them, because the old video probably has things that were dropped. The new video would only have things that were new. Well, that's not a good way to study either. That's an awful way to study. So you'll notice every time there is a new course, I write the entire course from scratch. I re-record. First, I create everything that's based on the current set of exam objectives, and then I re-record the entire course. The best example of this, if you've ever had to take a house and gut the house and put all new walls back up and all new furnishings, it costs more to do that than if you were to just raise the house and rebuild it all the way back up. It would cost much less if you could just tear everything down and build the whole thing brand new again. And that's basically the same problem with these certification exams. I could create videos that were just sort of a delta, and then you'd have to just watch all the delta videos to get there. But it's more work to do that for me. It will take longer for you to study that. It's going to create confusion because older topics can't be deleted from the older videos. And at the end of this, I could have been done already had I just created the whole thing from scratch. So it's much more accurate. It's much more to the point. It's much more concise and ultimately easier to study if I create a new course every time. So that's why. You will say a lot of people don't. They don't create a new course every time. They just do a delta. And you'll notice it's very difficult to study from those, and that's why. And that's why also there is not a tag that shows here's what's new, here's what's old, because quite honestly, it doesn't matter. When you move from one version of the exams to the other, very few people have those older materials still left. And those that have, I just tell them, go get the new stuff. Because purchasing a book is a relatively inexpensive purchase compared to an exam voucher. The videos obviously don't cost you anything. You can watch those online for free. And there's so much change between those that I would never recommend you watch the old stuff anyway. So the problem sort of takes care of itself, that newer videos and newer courses created from the ground up are much more accurate and much easier to learn from, in my opinion, than having to shoehorn in the new stuff and then make sure people knew that this part was new, but don't watch the old one that has this. I can't even keep up with that myself. So that's why I don't have those. I don't have the ability to make all of that work very well. I tried it once with Security Plus. So I have tried this before. It's not just me making assumptions here. I did it once for my very first Security Plus course when I went from, I think, the 301 to the 401. And I just did not feel, what I did for that one was take the old video and parsed them together. So I re-edited the old video. Oh, never do that again. What a mess. So no, not planning to. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's worthwhile to you. I think it's much easier for everybody if you get new materials all the way around. That way you're studying the right information. You're not studying old information that I still find out there with other people's materials. You're studying exactly what you should be studying for the exam. Nothing more, nothing less, and that's the way it should be for a certification exam. Other questions? Yeah, I like that spreadsheet too. It does come in handy. And you can make your own, of course. You know, it took me a number of hours to make that spreadsheet. But that's pretty good. That would be good to have that there. This is definitely off topic, but certainly worthwhile to talk about since we're sort of getting into that section of the after show. Let's Play says, can a person travel from Florida to California by railway? In which country do you live, Let's Play? I'd like to know. And it's true. Somebody did mention in the chat room that you could take an Amtrak from Florida to California. Okay, Let's Play is in Brazil. So that's why. No problem. You could. You don't want to. Rail travel in the United States is not, at least in most of the United States, is not something that is common or well established. There are, Amtrak is a good example of this. It's the one organization that can take you on rail from one side of the country to the other. Not the most efficient way to travel. Most rail travel in the United States is probably in the northeast part of the U.S. Because there are runs between, for instance, Washington and Boston, for example. You know, all of Washington and Philadelphia. A lot of it centers around D.C., so that people can get to New York to D.C., New York to Boston, D.C. to Boston. That whole area, they've got trains that go every hour that can get you there. So they've got the shuttles up there that can make that happen. Similar idea with the planes up there. You can get on a plane that will take you every hour. There's a plane that goes from Boston to D.C. or Boston to New York. They've got those too. There's just so many people in the U.S. that are in that northeast part of the country. It's a very populous, very dense part of the United States. In most of the United States, though, not even close to being that dense. And so, and never thought out. There was never a thought that we would be using rail because the United States is just so large that it's much easier to hop in a car and just drive somewhere. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of promotion of car travel. You know, Michelin's a good example of that, that they created the Michelin. You may have seen that Michelin will, and this is the company that makes the tires. They go to restaurants and they rate the restaurant. You get Michelin stars based on how good your restaurant is. And that originally was started because they wanted people to start driving. You know, this new thing came out called a car. They made tires for these cars and thought, how can we promote the idea of hopping in your car and going to a different experience? And they did that by promoting these restaurants. And they continue to promote the restaurants to this day, although their emphasis, of course, these days is not necessarily on selling more tires. It's really more about the money they can make on going to these different restaurants and giving them Michelin stars. So there's plus the country of the United States is just so large and in some cases not very dense. You can go through parts of Texas, parts of the Midwest, North and South Dakota, through Wyoming, and not a lot of people relative to the rest of the United States, relative to anywhere, not a lot of people in those particular areas. And so having a huge amount of travel and train infrastructure, probably not the best use of people's money. So that's why we just don't see them there. Huge amount of car travel in the United States for lots of reasons, and that's probably there. I don't know if this is true. Scott, why wouldn't it be true? It makes perfect sense. Scott in the chat room says, okay, I just looked it up on Amtrak. Take a train from Miami to LA, $419. What a great deal. Less than $500 and I can get from Miami to LA. Takes 99 hours. Literally takes 99 hours. You're on the train for days. And that's assuming, of course, that you won't run into any problems, which unfortunately does happen sometimes on these trains. So that's a long time. When you consider I'll bet you that if you looked at airline prices right now, Scott, or anyone from Miami to LA next month. So we won't do it tomorrow, but next month, month after, and you look at prices to air travel from Miami to LA, which there's probably even a direct from Miami on American. So let's assume a direct flight. That's probably about a 5-hour flight. 5 hours, probably about $419. So same price. You can go there in 5 hours or 99 hours. Which would you like to do? And there's the reason. That's what we do. So it's nothing like, for those of you in Europe, you're just spoiled with rail travel. And when I go to Europe, it's so nice because you could just take a train anywhere and it's on time and it's clean and it's fun. You see new things. You watch the world go by. It's fantastic. So no, didn't happen. Not going to work out that way. So hopefully that gives at least the idea of travel in the United States. That was an interesting segue that we did. But maybe not so interesting because I have worked with a lot of companies that are in transportation. So if you have any interest in transportation, just in the Southeast United States, I've worked with multiple companies for rail that have data centers in Jacksonville, in Atlanta, in the Carolinas. I've worked with airline companies in the southern part of the United States for places like Delta's has a huge presence in Atlanta, and there's other airlines around, especially there's some in South Florida, for example. And here in Florida, a lot of headquarters for cruise lines are based out of Florida. So I've worked with cruise lines that are based out of primarily South Florida. So the Royal Caribbean and Carnival, for example, two very big examples in the South Florida area. So there's transportation options everywhere. And in fact, in Florida, we're building new rail travel to go between South Florida and Central Florida right now. So people can get from Miami to Orlando's airport and beyond, hopefully. It's just that we have to retrofit everything. But it's interesting, the IT part that goes behind that. So the IT folks for people that book travel and people that provide the transportation are quite complex. You can imagine for rail travel and air, there are rules and regulations. There's complexity in their routes. There are things you have to address when problems occur. All of these have an IT component associated with them. And if you're working for those companies, you have to not only be familiar with the IT piece, but also with what happens with the transportation when these particular situations occur. So much fun and being able to figure it out. This does happen to me and something you should probably be aware of. Scott says, during job hunting, do you think cell phones flagging calls as spam has the danger of flagging companies calling you about a job application? Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things that is a challenge when you're dealing with mobile technology and spam and just security in general these days is you never know who's calling. Because very often I'll never pick up my phone. But then there will be this, like one time, and today is a perfect example, is I left a message for a company that I'm hoping can provide me with a particular service. So now I'm going to answer every call that comes in, wondering if it's that one I'm waiting for. And it's not, it's spam. every time. And I don't want to be flippant when I answer the phone, because sometimes in the past I've answered the phone, "Hello, spam caller. What can I do for you?" And of course, nobody's there because it's a machine and it's waiting for me to pick up and say something, so that then connects me to somebody that then tells me the spam thing. So they don't get to hear my flippant response, my flippant message that I give them when I answer the phone, but it's clearly not somebody legitimate. But I don't want to miss it. What if it was the person I was waiting on the call from? So it's something we just have to deal with. That's just normal. And then get the job application done, get the job, and then you can stop answering the phone again. That's my recommendation. Maybe we should just all stop answering our phones. We'll just take our communication to a prospective employer to text message. In fact, that would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? We'll work on that. That'll be next month on the study group. We'll talk about doing something like that. Well, that, I think, brings us to the end of this live stream. I want to thank everyone for being here in the first hour. Thank you for your time and your attention and your support. We could not do this without you. I say that over and over again, and it is so true, and we are so appreciative. Thank you so much for everything you do. We're just going to keep making these study materials and get you a job, or get you a better job, as long as you keep watching them. So thanks so much for your ongoing support. Join us next month on Wednesday of next month. Next week. Wednesday of next week is our Network Plus study group. A week from that is our Security Plus study group. You can always find when the next live event is going to be by visiting our website at professormesser.com/calendar, or simply choose the events link at the top of the website. We want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it so much. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.